Peace.
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 Beautiful, beautiful. I thank you for your patience. As always, this is a Moot Productions in conjunction with the Shrine of Maat. Well-anticipated lecture. Sister Myra L. doesn't come out often to do her thing. So whenever she does, you know, we appreciate it because the level of knowledge and information that she delivers, you're not going to get anywhere else. So I hope you brought a lot of paper, things of that nature, because you're going to have to take notes. Normally, like I said, when we put 3 o'clock on the flyer, you know, I know CPT time, 3:30 tops. However, people are beginning to take advantage of that. So, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to start offering coffee and cake when you get here early. And we're going to have something like a little networking situation, because what I notice is there are plenty of people within our mix who do so many different things. We have people who run their own businesses, we have publicists, doctors, lawyers. We have all these people amongst us, and you would never know unless you put yourself in a situation to start doing a little bit of networking. So what Moot Productions is going to begin doing is, if the lecture starts at 3, we're going to open up our doors at 1:30, coffee, cake, refreshments free. Come through, hand out your business cards, come stand up here, get a few minutes to tell us what it is you do, because I would like to spend money with my own people. We talk about it, but we don't practice it enough. So, starting on our next lecture, which will probably be November, the first Sunday in November, tentatively we'll have Azariah and Brother Rudra from out of St. Louis. That's tentative. I haven't really confirmed it as of yet. But stay on the network. We do a lot of emailing. You'll get the email, and I'll let you know exactly what it is. So that's what we'll be doing from now on. So if you have a business, if you're interested, come through a little bit early, get a slice of cake, tell us what you do. And one lucky business or one lucky entrepreneur, once a month we'll give an opportunity to step in front of the camera before the lecture and give us a little 10-minute briefing of what their business is all about or what their venture is all about, because our tapes go all over the country. Literally all over the country. So we want to begin in showcasing whatever it is you got. Shit, if you make muffins and they the best muffins in New York, and we want to let people know what it is you do. Okay, HHMMA is calling all warriors. We are the only martial arts school in Harlem that teaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, submission wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, and self-defense. All classes are free. That's the key word. Free. You can't beat that. You just got to show up, be, you know what I'm saying, put a best effort forward to be disciplined and learn these sciences. Because all of this science is our science. You know, I don't know too much karate, but I know crazy. Nah. Okay, so the classes is Tuesday and Thursday, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Is any age group involved with that?
12 and up.
12 and up.
A mature 9, they come in.
If they're mature.
Yeah.
Okay, if they're mature, we take them a mature 9, but we going 12 and up. What about on the other end?
Huh?
What about on the other end? Like how old?
On the other end, if you can get up in there, get there.
Okay.
We got a brother that's walked up at 64. We got a brother that's 54.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a beautiful thing. And like I said, the classes is free, so whenever a brother's putting out his time like that, come through and support him. I'm telling you now on camera, Black Dot will be there.
All right.
So I'm going to come through. I don't know if I'll make every class, but I'll come through and get my lessons on. Okay. So again, with that said, I want to thank everybody for coming, and thank you for your patience. We're going to kick off this inaugural thing where we showcase a brother to come up with this young brother. His name is William Jones. He hit me in the ear, said, yo, brother, I got some information that the people need. So we'll give him a warm, yes, hold on.
Could you give the address, please?
I need to give the address. My bad. The address is at the Wadley High School. PAL 215 West 114th Street between 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue. That's between Adam Clayton Powell and Frederick Douglass Boulevard. The phone number is 212-222-6577. Coach Ishmael, would that be you?
Yeah.
That's Coach Ishmael in the building. Black belt, 26 years.
Yes.
Damn.
6 years martial arts, yes.
That's serious. Don't mess with that, bro. I know he be laying just waiting for niggas to try shit. Be in the subway with his wallet hanging out and shit. Just laying, you know what I'm saying? That's what I do. I be like, God damn, motherfucker. I need to practice. Put this shit into practice. All right, with that said. Yeah, I think it's on. Okay, it's on, but I think you can leave it right there. Yeah, you can find it.
Okay. Again, thank everybody for coming out. I'm sorry about the delays. We had all kinds of obstacles to deal with. And I'm going to try to make this as comprehensive as possible. We're going to be discussing a lot of powerful subject matter and a lot of information that will hopefully be useful in your freedom and exiting out of this matrix, or at least operating in both worlds with some degree of expertise and information. We're going to open, we're going to have Sister Camille open with a poem that she had written for the shrine.
I just wrote this poem. It started coming. I was on the ShrineofMaat.com, and the music is so like cosmic and phenomenal. So this is what came out. It's called Reflections. Just speak a little louder.
Can I speak louder?
Yeah, microphone.
Microphone.
Okay. Welcome to the jurisdiction of peace. Welcome to the jurisdiction of peace. Welcome to the jurisdiction of peace. At least give us beats, freedom, kingdoms, beat drums. Go down by the river, cleansing soiled souls as the Rayman ship is. Neither him nor me knew what it could be, but we did the ritual. We lived by the spiritual laws, effect and cause, because the jaws of death shadowed around our cosmic wealth, seeking to take us, but they can never break us. They only fake us, not for long, not for songs have sounded, armies rounded. The Rayman does his due again, and we still hoping and praying, saying, the floodgates open today, they open away. Things we thought we'd never say because the vibration has raised. Tomorrow ain't promised today, and we know this, so we'll show his snow kids. Their time is up. It's our time. What's up? The rain dance again. Last chance, and then the floodgates open. This song is my token. Bind us with cords that can never be broken. What had put us under now lies under our feet, under our heat. Khametian palpitations, the cosmic heartbeats. Celestial mothers providing covers, purple blanketed skies for lovers, bodies cocoa brown. It's about to get loco now, and the joke goes loud. You laugh me black and blue, but who's laughing now? Children of Ra, dancing like giant fireflies. I glanced over into his crystal eyes, and there I saw Tamari, us at our highest. I saw us before, and I saw us in glory. I saw us for sure. I saw us as pure. And there I stood on my rooftop, knowing the embers of Kemet had just started glowing. The fire began to blaze in my heart, till the flames leaped out of my soul and burned in my yard. The pain ceased on my part, black diamonds ascending with art and grace. And there I stood and watched in my place. I knew right away it could not be changed. It would not be renamed. It was what it was, and still is she. Still is peace. Still is free. Still is black, and she's coming back with new Maatian Moorish flags. As the cowards drag, she has taken her stance. The Rayman does his dance. Do you know who has entered your world? I suggest you let your true intentions unfurl, because see, she knows your character. She knows you're mad at her, but she does not think twice to rekindle her flames. All her adepts and Khametian dames, her army is an ocean of mocha vaginas. The forces behind her, sons of Cam overstand. She is womb and man. She is mother, family, love her. brother. Hug her, father, love her. Husband, lust her. She is universe, universe. The jurisdiction of peace, we put you first. We've seen the worst, and the best are her words exploding in my chest. And here comes again the man of rain on the freedom train, announcing sovereignty. Follow me. All the days of my life I shall walk through the valleys of the shadows of truth. Today she will prove it's our time to move.
From her heart. We're going to begin. I just want to explain. I brought my altar with me, and basically it is invoking the 4 elements. The 4 elements are the building block of this universe: water, the crystals represent the earth, the candles, the fire, and the incense, the air. And we are all made of these components within us. You can see it in your chart, in your astrological chart. The earth represents your ability to manifest on the physical planet. The air represents your intellect. The water represents your emotions, and the fire represents your will. So we are embracing all of these elements with us and calling on the ancestors to be with us, and calling on the positive ancestors and the warrior ancestors, because we are at war whether we realize it or not. Okay, and I also want to give thanks to Noble Drew Ali, who left us a wonderful legacy, particularly at this time. He had the fact that I can see he had the consciousness back in the early 20s to know that one day there would be some of us that would appreciate the legacy that he left in this particular time under this current New World Order agenda. The topic of this lecture is called Overstanding the Esoteric Hidden Secrets of Commerce and Money in America and Why You Don't Have Either. Esoteric may be a new word for some, but I want to point out that every religion has an esoteric, which is a hidden science to the religion that the public does not know, and it has an exoteric. From Judaism to Christianity to Islam, all of these religions have these 2 components. And what we're going to be dealing with today is the esoteric science of money and commerce in America in 2006. And a lot of this information has been held from us, and as a result, we are having great difficulty navigating in commerce in this society. And I'm hoping that once we begin to understand these principles and use them, it's like we've been playing a game, but nobody ever taught the rules. And what I'm about to share today is not the end-all and be-all, but it is a beginning. It is a place to start, and it is something that we need to begin to start forming study groups and start internalizing this knowledge. Also, I want to say, although a lot of the information that I'm dealing with is dealing with commerce and dealing with the law, I want to do my disclaimers that I'm not an attorney, I'm not offering legal advice, I'm basically sharing my experience based on my research and information that I've gathered over the years. A lot of basically, for some, what you're going to hear today is going to seem utterly incredible. It's going to be, may seem even insane. So briefly, I want to basically just go over a little bit about my background for those of you who may not know me, so when you're assessing in your mind whether I'm insane or not, you have something to weigh it against. Basically, primarily, I'm an astrologer and a metaphysician. I've been working on the underground for several years. Basically, I just recently, in the last 4 years, got into the study of law and sovereignty, and it has basically consumed the last 3-4 years of my life, not really being able to delve into the metaphysics as I would like to. From being on the underground, we have the Shrine of Maat International in Queens, where we've taught a lot of the ancient sciences. We've taught the astrology, the numerology, the metaphysics, the African magic, rituals, the Mayan astrology. These were all the tools that our ancestors used and passed on to their children, and that's how they were able to navigate the entire planet for so many years. And these are tools that we no longer have available to us. There's no real forums where we can learn these sciences, so we're kind of, you know, lost at sea without the tools and the benefit that our ancestors had. And I encourage everyone to, you know, pick one of our ancient sciences and attempt to master it. Because if you understand the cosmic time that we're in, it's important. We don't have much time to waste. You're looking at the news, you're seeing every day things are in complete and total chaos. That everything is in place to put everyone on lockdown. Now, spiritually, if you understand what time it is, you understand that we as melanin dominant people have been in a karmic sort of punishment situation for the last 2,000 years or so. And cosmically, there's certain doorways that are opening up for us to regain our planet and our power and our rightful place on the planet. And we will not be able to do these things if we don't understand the sciences and understand the structure and the nature of the universe. Metaphysics is dealing with nothing but above physics, above matter. So that's spirituality. We need to understand that sound, light, electricity, they're all the same thing. They only differ in terms of the frequency, the vibrations per second. So with spirituality and metaphysics being at the higher end of those vibrational frequencies, which can't even be measured with any of the instruments that we have today, this is where we must begin to move to. I'd like to talk a little bit about Willie Lynchism. I'm sure many people are familiar with that, which is basically a formula, a spell that was used during the times of slavery in 1712, and it was designed to last for 300 years. Those 300 years takes us right to 2012. 2012 is extremely significant because this is the end of the Mayan calendar, which is the most accurate calendar on the planet. And basically, the planet Earth is going to increase its vibrational frequency. And it's very important that we increase our own vibrational frequencies, because otherwise we will be purged from this dimension. So a lot of the information and the stuff that I teach is designed to basically prepare us for this time. And this is why the powers that be are putting everything on complete and total lockdown, so that we are not in a position to do what it is that we should be doing at this time. Although 2012 may seem like a long time away, it actually is not. It's like right around the corner. And the powers that be have been planning and preparing, you know, to co-opt people's power. A lot of the information that I'm going to deal with, I tried through slides and presentations to make it as exciting as possible. It is some pretty boring stuff, I'm going to tell you now. And for those of you that watch a lot of television, it'll be very difficult for you to stay focused on where we're trying to go with this lecture. So, you know, if you're feeling sleepy, get up, walk around, get some water, because basically, why I say television, television is the most sophisticated form of mind control that exists. These people are not paying $6 to $20 million for a 60-second soundbite if it didn't have any significance. And if you're watching television in the dark in a closed room, you see all the lights blinking. That's basically synapsing the mind, and it's training you just to hold your attention span for 60-second sound bites. So I'm asking everyone to please be patient with me and try to follow this through, because at the end of the lecture, you know, I deal with a lot of remedies, and this is where we need to go with that. There's also something known as cognitive dissonance. This is the inability to process new information due to prior programming, belief system, and so that's okay if that's happening. Everything is in divine right order, and when you're supposed to wake up, you're supposed to wake up. By and large, I feel that only really a small segment of the people in this room will fully understand what it is I'm trying to say. And hopefully the rest, through time and space, it'll click one day. The light bulb will go off and say, that's what she was talking about. This is where we're at. You know, and hopefully most of us will wake up while we can still do something about it. Okay, I want to quote the statement from Arthur Schopenhauer. He says, when a well-packaged web of lies have been gradually sold to the masses over generations, the truth will seem utterly preposterous, and its speaker a raving lunatic. All truth passes through three stages. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. And third is accepted as being self-evident. So a lot of the information that we're talking about, I try to bring as much proof and documentation as possible. I encourage everybody to do their own research. You know, everything is verifiable. Also, I just want to say the Creator has given us all a spiritual barometer in our solar plexus chakra. When you're in the presence of truth, you may feel like a fluttering in your solar plexus chakra. So that's also an additional barometer that you can, use to see if that makes sense to you. And let your spirit be your guide. I also, when we did the classes, the 13-week classes, Spiritual Sovereignty, we began every class with an opening prayer, affirmation, and this is very short. I want to pass this out to everyone. If we can say this as a group, it is extremely empowering. And on the back side of it, it just has information about the Shrine of Maat and the different services that we offer.
You're going to be able to get those here? Yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask everybody to please stand. And for the name God, whatever name you call by, sleepwalk. Okay, at the count of three, we're going to begin. 1, 2, 3.
There is a universal God power sinking an outlet through me. The manifestation of the universal power is through my mind. Today I accept the presence of power. Today I acknowledge that there is a divine force instructing me in all that I do. Today I affirm divine power has resisted the presence of joy and happiness in my life. Today I know that every atom and every cell and every tissue and every organ in my body is brought from divine power. All that I need or desire comes to me in divine ways, by order, by divine right. Today I will watch my thoughts, for my thoughts determine my words. Today I will watch my words, for my words determine my actions. Today I will watch my actions, for my actions determine my habits. Today I will watch my habits, for my habits determine my character. Today I will watch my character, because my character determines my destiny. Ashe, so it's done.
Thank you very much. That's a very powerful affirmation. And, okay. Now the last thing for this part of the intro that I would like to do, because I understand that those that know the power of a conscious more claiming their nationality, they would see that as a threat. And basically, as you've probably seen on the news a couple of months with the group in Florida, and they tried to accuse them of being terrorists and this and that and the other. So I just have a short statement that I'd like to put on the record, so that, if you ever hear like, oh, she's a terrorist, this is how I'm telling you, that's not true. Okay?
Can't hear you. Mic up. Yeah, you have a microphone.
This is the actual mic for the recorder.
Right.
Yeah, I'll try to speak a little louder. And I don't know, we got a lot of room up there. I use my deodorant. Okay, comes now the illustrious autotonic Moor Myra Snyder L. Ahaya Asha Ahaya Num Punk Oot Num. I am that I am. I am a living soul, an organic flesh and blood womb man. I, Myra Snyder L., do hereby declare that I am a more American national of the Empire for Khametian Memorial in the continental United States of America Republic, as are all my heirs. I possess full, majestic, and unalienable powers by virtue of my divine connection to the Creator, Yadha Waha, my harmonization with universal law, my mitochondrial DNA, my genetic construct, my ancient ancestral heritage, my historical legacy. I, being first duly sworn, depose, affirm, and declare by my autograph that the following facts are true to the best of my knowledge and understanding. I am publicly declaring peace with all beings, both positive and negative. I, Myra Snyder L., am a foreign neutral, non-enemy combatant in anonymity. And as such, I am vehemently opposed to any and all forms of violence, war, terrorism, the calculated use of unlawful violence designed to inculcate fear, intended to coerce or intimidate. In addition, to any acts that endangers human life, especially the unlawful use of force or violence, also including any violations of humanity's God-given human rights and or civil rights, paper terrorism, and insummation. I will not tolerate or accept any of these acts directed toward me, myself, or my heirs, including but not limited to the physical, mental, emotional, astral, spiritual, etheric, and soulful realms, planes of existence. I've never been at war with anyone or any nation, and I am at peace with all men, all governments, all kings and queens, and anyone who would profess to be my enemy. Mother, Father, God owns this universe, and they have declared peace with all mankind, and through their Son, Yeshua, this action is in accordance with and also documented and authorized through the divine universal law and principles, the 42 laws of Ma'at, the great binding law of Guyana, the 1786 Treaty of Marrakesh, sovereign documents from the United States of America and General Congress assembled belonging to Ab Antiquico family of nations via the law of nations and the Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act. Please take notice of the Vienna Convention. Notice to principal is notice to agent, and notice to agent is notice to principal. So basically, we're going to begin, because we have a lot of information. I'm going to introduce a brother to the dais. He's going to get a little bit into the Moorish presence in America. We need to understand that if we are going to declare our Moorish nationality, we have to understand what that means and what that entails, and what was the governmental structure that was in place before the governmental structure that we're dealing with now. It's in a nutshell, what I'm going to be discussing is how we went from natural law, God-given law, into these artificial laws, through contracts, through different information that was never presented to us. And as such, this is why we find the harassment that we receive from the police and different bodies of government, because we're not in our proper status. Through contracts, we've been redesignated to strawmen, to corporations, to all kinds of things. And this goes on every single day without our awareness, without our consciousness. And so basically, when we don't rebut it, it stands as law. So we need to understand how we get into these situations based on our not knowing the truth and not claiming our correct status. This is why throughout the temples in Kemet, all over the place, you saw man, woman, know thyself. Yes. You know, so we've been here, we've been called colored, Negro, African American, this, that, and the other. All of these terms are terminology that was created in the fiction. This is why we will never, ever get reparations. There is no such thing as African American. It has no basis in the law of nations. So as long as you're coming outside of yourself, you will always be in this situation where you have no rights because you're coming incorrectly. So I'm going to introduce Brother Clay Whitebear Bay. He's the chairman of the Cherokee Language and Cultural Center, Akitawa Moore. And we give it
So just hold that mic, please.
First, extend my gratitude to you, Sister Myra. Just hand you some sage. And the Kiowa folk, sage, everybody knows it's just a burn and a cleanse, but the sweet grass does the same as well. To the Plains natives in Kiowa country, near, let's see, near, well, I guess you would consider Kansas, parts of the Midwest. They have a specific style of dance dedicated directly to the grass that grows over 6 or 7 feet high out there. And the point of the dance is to stomp the grass down so that they have a place to build teepees and build houses. So the sweetgrass is you know, one of the specialties of that type of grass that grows in those regions. And as the saying goes, he who stomps a teepee best gets the best woman to build his teepee for. What have you, but I just wanted to say why those. So,
you know, getting through to us is difficult, so you got to really project yourself, your voice.
No problem. What is, all right. So, first and foremost, obviously the importance of the situation at hand is status. Understanding exactly who we are as Moors and understanding exactly what it is we are here to do in reference to helping to cleanse this karma. Okay. We are in a situation right now where the imbalance that you see repeatedly over and over again throughout popular culture, forms of art, as well as throughout the society that we inhabit, are now we're in a position to counterbalance it psychically like we've never been before. Not only psychically, but legally, lawfully. And we're moving ourselves from...
We can't hear you back there. We can't hear you at all. You need a mic or something, because I don't want to go through the whole section.
Can you stand up?
Maybe the mic is not turned towards us now.
What about the mic right there?
It's just for the camera.
What about the mic right there?
Yeah, that mic is on up there. Use that mic over there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Can you move it?
Is that better?
Thank you.
So we're going to begin just with a brief history. Mind you, the overview of what we're about to focus on is not in any way, shape, means, or forms thorough. The majority of the work, the majority of the focus is going to have to be done individually because everybody learns different. You know? What you see here is a picture from a book by a brother named Ivan Van Sertima. Van Sertima wrote a book called African Presence in Early America. Okay? African Presence in Early America. For those of you that know A&B books, not too far from here, the book's available at the bookstore. It's also available up at the Humanist Wings up on 125th, up in Harlem. This was one of the sculptures that was found in ancient Mesoamerica, also known as a Mexim, to the Moorish Republic. Okay? A Mexim was the old name for America. And I'm not talking about America specifically, just North America. I'm talking about all the continents in entirety. All right? So what you have here is a perfect example of the phenotype of our ancestors, the phenotype of the original man and his presence with carbon-dated, ceramics, if you will, that show how long our presence has been on this continent. Okay? So I'm just going to move steadily ahead and talk a little bit about Mesoamerica and talk about a Mexim, all the way from the tip of Texas down into Argentina. Okay? This is predominantly where the mixing of these races we now know as those who come from Mexico, as well as those who come from Peru and Colombia and all of these places, even far north as the North Americas and Canada, predominantly took place. It was a Mexico. Okay? So they just don't proceed, but what you're going to see here is an ancient map of well, it's not even so much ancient, it's a root map of the expatriation from the western horn of Africa over to South America as well as North America. Okay? Most of us understand this connection through what they call the transatlantic slave trade. Okay? But what I wanted you to see specifically is not only the routes that were made, but I wanted you to focus a little bit on the consciousness of the actual currents that were within those waters, of the Atlantic waters, all the way up from Chile and Argentina, all the way up into Greenland, from the motherland and what have you. Okay? The continent itself, naturally off the Western Horn, pulled ships into South America, near Brazil, near Venezuela, and a little bit further south. Okay? And what happened was in around the year 1353, if I'm not mistaken, around the year 1353, there was a brother named Mansa Musa. Okay? Mansa Musa was an ancient Mandingo explorer. He was an explorer, as they called him. And what Mansa Musa was on credit or known for, on document, was actually stopping through Cairo in Egypt on his way to Mexico to build with the rulers of the land at the time. Okay? And what was put on record was the reality that there were two voyages prior to his voyage in 1324 to Mecca of Mandingo explorers who actually wound up drifting off past the distance in the Atlantic that they had known was possible to drift through. And those voyages never came back. Okay? And this is why I'm showing you this map. You have all of these experiences near Ghana, near the Gold Coast, Ivory Coast, all of these places where you see these voyages, which we already understand in American history. But there are proven documentations of Moors or Aboriginals extending themselves out of the continent into wherever, just trying to go beyond. Okay? In places like Gibraltar and places like Southern Europe, you will see overwhelming evidence of folklore and tales that was given to the Europeans because the ones of that region who knew the Gold Coast and knew the trade and knew northern Maghreb did not want Europeans conscious of the travel beyond those waters because of the land that they considered secret at those times. And that land was this one. Okay. 1324, you had a brother named Mansa Musa. Right? He went and did a voyage. He came to Cairo to talk about previous voyages. All right? Let's move on a little bit. To the next. All right? So we have here what they call the Perry Reyes map. Okay? Perry Reyes was another explorer. Okay? He was a traveler. And he, in the 16th century, made a voyage based on this map right here that also had just a mapping of northern Africa, if you will, okay? And the coastlines, near Maghreb and what have you. And this map is significant because Perry Reyes was noted for taking about 20 examples of different maps that had exceeded him or preceded him to make this voyage. Okay? And all of this stuff is on record. This is Ivan Van Sertima. He talks about it thoroughly. All right? The Perry Reyes map was important because they had maps that he had taken evidence from to make this new one as old as the times of Alexander the Great. Okay? And it helped him thoroughly throughout his navigations, obviously. Right? And it's important because you're talking about the 15th and 16th centuries. Now, when most scholars of our descent do knowledge to the availability of literacy, the availability of longitude, latitude, navigation, and things of that nature, the majority of the European unions or nations did not have access to this knowledge until way after this map was created. Okay? So you have a situation where, unfortunately right now, you're forced to take my word for it, but there is documentation beyond me and others here who know of this. There has been relentless proof that these voyages and these mappings of these lands have been made way before they talk about the so-called Enlightenment and this expatriation from Europe through Portugal and Spain and all of these places. Okay? There's another brother named Graham Hancock. Okay? Graham Hancock wrote a book called The Fingerprints of the Gods. And what Graham was talking about in that book, specifically in reference to maps, was a mapping of the world that went longitude and latitude, right? To the degree where there were mountain ranges that were placed into both North and South poles, okay? And the significance of that is the reality that both of the poles have been under thick layers of ice for the past 6,000 years, okay? So you're in a situation where you have mappings, if they are valid, of peoples who have made voyages to the poles at times when there was no ice on them at all. So if these maps are valid, you're talking about voyages, you're talking about mappings of the world that existed way prior to even ancient Egypt. Okay? And this is the depth in consciousness. This is what we have to fathom in reference to being Aboriginal people. There have been brown people on this planet making voyages from the Americas to Africa and vice versa for quite some time. Quite some time. All right?
I just want to say that among the nautical community, the Perry Rays, actually it's Perry Rays Bay map, is highly regarded and highly respected in those circles. And you can get an official copy, $60-something through the Library of Congress. And it's very significant because it documents our history being here prior to Europeans. And this is one of the biggest secrets that's out there. They don't want us to understand, understand that we were here first, because then you get into land claims, you know. So it is, we must be clear what exactly is going on under this whole New World Order agenda to move us further from claiming back the land of our ancestors.
All right. So here we are with the Olmec heads, okay? What you see here is on the left you have a huge picture of it's a sculpture, obviously, made of basalt stone, if I'm not mistaken, and the name of the sculptures was Tres Zapotes, okay? And these sculptures were found all throughout Peru and places in South America. And what you can't see, unfortunately, is the profile of the brother that you see here, okay? Because he has thick plaited braids all down his head. The same way in ancient China, you will see what statues of the Buddha. And to the Chinese, they have these little spirals all over the Buddha's head. And what they try to explain is that the spirals represent something relative to the helix and the ascension up into higher consciousness on the Buddha's head. But the reality is, it is more relative to the Buddha's phenotype, or naps. You know what I'm saying? So all that to say, right here with the Tres Zapotes statues, you have huge basalt stone statues that are over 9 feet tall, sitting in the middle of Peru. Okay, and when the Europeans showed up, what he tried to do was justify these stones as pictures of the actual Moors or the Olmecs, the ones who had mixed in with the native people of those regions from a dissension through the Gold Coast and the Ivory Coast and all of these places. Okay? Now, what wound up happening was they said that the stones were doctored to a point where they were saying these people didn't have the proper chiseling tools to make the stones look like the Europeans that they should have looked like because of their confidence in being the ones first on the scene. Now, what's funny about that is the word European is a trick too, because we were all over Europe as well. And the history books that have given us this perspective on who it is we are as a people have gone about changing the names of who these people are to help us fathom something illusory, as opposed to grasping our place in this experience we know now in North America. Okay? So that's just one example. Okay? Here's another picture of an Olmec statue on the left, on the right, and then you see a Nubian king next to him. Okay? You can obviously see the similarities. Okay? We've been here for a long time. Is basically what I'm showing you. All right? Here we have a hieroglyph, if you will, of an ancient Mayan scene here, where you see on the right a sister cooking, and then you see a large brown-skinned brother right here commanding another brother or sister to the floor, right? And what's happening here is not really of relevance as far as to specifically what that picture is detailed, but what's important is to recognize the hue. Okay? Egyptians, Africans, so-called Egyptians, so-called Africans, so-called people from Togo or Benin or Coast or what have you, all over Mesoamerica. Okay? Not just in the 15th and 14th centuries, but way prior. Okay? And from what I'm coming to understand now, it's been over 8,000 and much longer time than that as well. Okay? In the ancient, let's see, I believe it was from some of the remains of the 5th dynasty ballads, if I'm not mistaken. They found traces of a root along the tooth or the teeth lining of the jaw in some of the pharaoh's remains. And in that tracing, what they found was a plant called Tobacco rusticana. Okay, Tobacco rusticana is the natural leaf that is grown here that is then processed with nicotine and arsenic and all of these different chemicals. Don't worry, I smoke too. I ain't get on anybody. But it's the leaf before it's processed, and that leaf only grows here in North America and South America. Okay? The Arawaks, which are the natives or the so-called Jamaican people of Jamaica, Haiti, all these places. I'm not saying so-called like that's not who they are. I'm just talking about their sovereign identity as opposed to their federal one. Okay? You have a situation where those peoples were credited with the expansion of tobacco beyond the Caribbean into North America to build with the peoples of the lands here. All right? But that's a tangent. The point is the hue. Okay? And here we have a picture of Montezuma. Okay? Obviously, you see his complexion. Okay? He is of both so-called African and so-called Indian descent. Okay? And he was a great ruler of the times, and not only that, one credited to the last stand up front against colonialism when the Mexican colonists, as well as the Americans, as well as a few other nations, ran through Mexico to put down an end to the sovereign rule that was working in Mexico. Okay? Any military people in here? Remember that song? From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Right? What they're talking about is the destruction of the sovereign rule all the way from Mexico into Tripoli or Maghreb, Northern Africa. Okay? When you talk about this New World Order, okay, I want to get something clear for those who are trying to grasp the concept. It's not really that new. Okay? It's a newer revelation of the same science. Okay? When you go into what DNA and RNA is, okay, this is a basic minuscule structure. You have a situation where RNA, right, DNA, okay, both twine up the helix. The reason why crack is so addictive is because crack replicates itself to look exactly like RNA. Okay? And as it spines up that helix, your body starts to recognize the inducement of crack as RNA. So it becomes genetically placed into your program as a necessity. Okay? In the Judeo-Christian text, they talk about it. They say the devil shall transform himself into the angel of light.
Yes.
Right? What they're talking about is the mirror reflection. Okay? Everything that the negative aspects of our balance has to produce or perform has to look like the real thing. Okay? So yes, they're going to still acknowledge these Aztecs. Yes, they're going to still acknowledge these Mexicas, these Huichol, these different people, but they're only going to acknowledge them corporately now. And this is what was done in Mexico to make Mexico a country, to make it a federalist zone, the same way that happened in Jamaica, the same way it happened in Haiti, the same way it happened in Tripoli, the same way it happened all over Northern Africa. The French came through Algiers and put an end to the sovereign rules of the sultans, the Moors, to establish a federal rule to separate the people in their sovereign right from their authority in how they would govern their lives.
How does the federal system tie into what's going on in the federal system here in America? Like the whole reclassification of the Moors in Tripoli and in Mexico. How does that deal with the federal situation here in America and the Moors over here?
Okay. Well, the federalism itself, like in the best fashion of America. Okay, there was a United Sovereign States that existed prior to this corporate entity that we now know as the United States of America. And the same thing happened throughout the world with Reconstruction. Okay, when you talk about the continent, what was happening was these Belgians, these Germans, these Dutch, these Scottish, these English, all of these European unions got together with the consciousness of reconstructing the entire world. Okay, and what they were doing was making politically grafted lines of places like Togo and Benin and Morocco and Cameroon and Sudan and all of these places. Okay, and huge populations of people who had been inhabited in a certain place together found themselves drawn in between political maps where they were now parts of different countries, because the federal zones were stepping in to decide how the country was going to be ruled and how the country was going to be mapped out. So federalism itself was the New World Order. Okay? And this is what was happening during the time of the Reconstruction, or in the 16th and 17th century. All right, so you have a situation where all the world now is subject to this. Okay? Presidents preside in legalese over corporations. Sovereign rulers, bukus, chiefs, sultans, all these different peoples, imams, leaders. Okay, when you talk about the word Al-Qaeda, okay, in Arabic it's directly connected to a community-based ruling or judging. Okay, someone does wrong or something is haram, something is forbidden, and it is done. The people bring the act and the actor or the person to the spiritual leader or the imam. And it is decided by the laws of Islam what is to be done with that person. That's a community-based focus. And to some degree, that reality still exists, that leadership still exists, but it does not have the sovereign right to govern itself over federal jurisdiction until it can process itself in the way that the sister is about to teach you.
But wasn't the whole federal system on this landmass, wasn't that always in place, like the way we know it now?
Not the way we know it now. There was this United States, United Sovereign States of America, okay? But it wasn't of America, it was just the United Sovereign States, okay? So you have a situation where all the way from Greenland, all the way to Chile, you have United Sovereign States. In North America, these states were known as, in North America, these states were known as tribes, if you will, all the way from the Cherokee to the Catawba, Cayugas, Senecas, Tuscaroras, the Kiowa, the Kickapoo, all these different nations, all right? You had a situation where they were sectioned out acres of land and understood each other's boundaries, but once the federalism came in, just like it did in Africa, it became nation states understood as colonies, okay? You have a situation with Providence of Rhode Island. You have a situation with Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, all these different places, okay? And that federal rule eventually seized control of these lands, and that is the predicament that we're working out of right now as we speak.
So the colonies came from the tribes, or because I was always understood to believe that the colonies came from Europe?
Right. The colonies were also received by the tribes, by the nations, and not really tribes. Anytime you hear the word Indian, all right, get the idea of tribe out of your head. That was another way to subjugate the sovereign authority of the people who walk those lands. And when I say authority, all I'm speaking on is their overseeing of the land in reference to tilling it, keeping it present and keeping it whole under the eyes of the Creator. The Creator put you on certain soil and you were there to till that land and to harvest it and to nurture it, then that was your sovereign lineage and descent, and you had right to do so. And the federal corporations and jurisdictions removed that right. Right? So, long story short, we're getting a little behind what please, brother.
Is there a way of getting it back, or is there a way where the people who've been, when you said the federal,
right,
have suppressed the people?
Right.
Is there a way where the people can regain that sovereignty back?
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. Okay. Yes, indeed. There's definitely a way, and it's the proper procedure that is understood in the form of law that is being accepted on these lands now to regain you your proper jurisdiction.
Can you explain that double that?
All right. What we're talking about is reestablishing a connection to a jurisdiction that pre-existed the one that the federal people are now functioning under. Okay? You have a situation where all treaties between the United States and any sovereign nation are still binding. Those treaties are all still binding. The reason why they didn't have to honor them with Sitting Bull and all of these different natives was because they accepted the offer of being recognized in a federal capacity. We will grant you sovereignty in this means. And no, they wasn't punks. They fought to the death. And it came down to one thing. If you want to eat, we have now burned all your crops and taken every provision available for you to provide for yourself. Then you need to understand yourself as such and remain sovereign within the parameters that we provide. No reservation.
Yes.
That's what happens. Okay? So our point, or our focus as Aboriginals here in this continent is to figure the proper procedure to put these people on notice as to who we are. Because once we can remove ourselves from the jurisdiction, the authority is not respected in the sense we can walk around like, pissing on, curtains. But it's respected in the sense that the law that pre-existed it now claims jurisdiction over all of their functions. All right? All right. So, moving along, let's see, where were we going? I think we talked about Montezuma. Okay? All throughout Mexico, all throughout Peru. Okay? Moorish experience, Aboriginals, governing themselves, ruling themselves with all types of respected and extensively comprehensive understandings of mathematics, understandings of science, okay? Philosophy, chemistry, all these things, okay? Here you'll see a picture of the Sphinx, okay? And then next to it you'll see remnants of some of the temples that existed in Peru, near Mexico, okay? Obviously, there's no direct comparison between the two as far as their structure is concerned, but what's important is to recognize pyramid culture that has existed on this continent. And there are some elders that will tell you it's older than the experience in Egypt. When they credit Egyptian pyramids, or Giza, to its constellational alignment with the constellation of Orion, the movement of the Earth on its axis at the north of the North Pole puts it at a degree that in order for it to be completely aligned the proper way that they said it was aligned to Orion, it would have had to have been constructed 6,000 years prior to the 4000 BC timeline that they give it. Okay? There have been archaeological digs done by the University of Arizona in the early 1940s that found ancient like stones, if you will, that mapped out certain constellations. Okay, it was proven that these constellations were in these stones for the purpose of agriculture. Okay, amongst the Cherokee specifically, they recognized the right corn festival, the green corn festival. That's their New Year. Okay, and what they're doing is recognizing the proper astrological alignments to plant harvest and to reap harvest. Okay. They did a carbon dating testing, and as well as a couple of others on these stones, and found out that these stones were over 200,000 years old. Okay? Now, you have situations with the NEBC. You have situations with the University of Pennsylvania. Okay? All of these different peoples, the acronym NEBC stands for No Explorers Before Columbus Coalition. And this was an organization of Europeans dedicated to their tale of what they prospectively, or what they perceived to be the growth of knowledge and the expansion of humanity, if you will. They saw to it that the majority of the artifacts and the remnants that were found here were never found. Okay? They buried them all throughout Pennsylvania, with a lot of the remnants of Egypt that they have in the hieroglyph and obelisks and all these things in the University of Pennsylvania museums. All these different museums, that stuff is chilling in the archives. You know what I mean? And they won't really let it up. You know? Mound builders, okay? Not only just mound builders, but predating the mounds, pyramid builders. Okay, these pyramids in Mesoamerica were lined up with the constellations in winter, summer, and fall solstice the same way you see certain alignments in Egypt and Giza with those pyramids. Okay? The science was destroyed by the burning of the Inquisition. When I say the Inquisition, I'm talking about the Spaniards who came through and burned all of the books in those regions known as Peru, Venezuela, and Colombia, and all of these places. Okay? The focus for these people was to have us specifically dedicated to the idea of Egypt, the idea of Africa. Okay? What they did not want us to know was that we have bloodline as well as sovereign right and lineage descended on this continent since antiquity, or the beginning. There's some Indian elders that will tell you this is Africa. And Africa is the extension of where people travel. But that's a tangent. There's no point in going into all of that because the time to debate is not for me to debate. What I'm trying to do is give a brief overview. All right? The African thatched roof houses and the teepees of the plains. Okay? The wigwam was the style of housing that was closest to the longhouse people of the eastern woodland areas known as the East Coast here. All right? And that wigwam was also found on the shores of Scotland, the shores of Ireland, the shores of the Iberian Peninsula known as, Britain in the 12th and 13th centuries. Okay? So our experience wasn't just here, it was also over there. It was Indians over there too. But the science was reclassifying who everybody is. Because if I can tell you who you are, behind your back, legalese, what I can do is now claim the copyrights to that identification. And I can subjugate you to a reality that removes you of your rights to be who it is you fully have the capacity to be. And that's what happened to all of us as black people. All right? So let's move forward. This is South America now. I'm just showing you some remnants of what's happening in South America. Okay? Now we're going to move on to which one? Oh yeah. Definitely. No question. Right here what you see is what they call the Iroquois flag. Okay? The Iroquois is a French word for people known as the Haudenosaunee. Okay? The Haudenosaunee is the ancient word of these peoples for what they call people of the Longhouse. Okay? Longhouse people were Eastern Woodland Indians all the way from Florida up into Maine, into New Brunswick, and even into parts of Ontario, Canada. All right? And what they were doing as Longhouse people were governing themselves and conducting themselves in small groups of people under the ways of the ancient Moorish right. Okay? They got classified as Indians to separate them from their aboriginal connection to us, because they didn't want any traces in history for us to be able to prove that we have blood in America. Okay? What you see is the tree in the middle, which is the white tree of peace. The white tree of peace was the law of peace that was returned to the people through a prophet named Dagon Dalia. Okay? And this happened sometime in the, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the 12th or the 13th century. All right? Maybe a little later, but I'll have to check with the elders. The point being is that the 4 squares around them represent the other 4 nations of the 5-nation confederacy. Okay? You have the Seneca, which is where George Washington was. You have the Cayuga, the Tuscarora. You have the Mohawk, and you also have Oneidas. Oneidas, Onondagas, Senecas, Cayugas, and Mohawks. And then eventually the Tuscarora joined the Union. Okay, the Tuscaroras were a little bit further south near D.C. Right? What this was a resurrection of the ancient empire. Okay? When you talk about Reconstruction, when you talk about the 12th and 13th centuries, you had a situation where the ancient Moorish rite that existed not just here, but globally, was being destroyed. We understood it in the East through China, the Republic of China, through the Republic of or the Soviet Union, if you will. Okay? Turkey, all of these places, these republics, these different peoples were governing under the ancient Moorish ways, and eventually fell short of the mark, started bugging. You know? And that is what created the karma and the situation that we are in now today. All right? What the Iroquois were doing was following an ancient law that was reestablished to resurrect the United Sovereign States once it fell. Okay? And this is where the Moors that we understand now, the ones that we are following in their footsteps, come into place. All right? Let's look at the next flag. Real quick. What you're seeing here is a map of there's a magazine called Ancient America. If you ever see it on the shelves, pick it up. What they talk about is the ancient sovereign rights, or the ancient sovereign land plots of the peoples here. This is the land plots or the mounds that existed around a tribe known as the Ben Ishmael. Okay, but they weren't really a tribe, they were a nation. Okay? In Alabama, you have peoples known as the Ali Bamu. Okay, and the Ali Bamu were the Moors. You also have the Washita Nation, which is a little closer to Louisiana. Okay? All over, you have the Dene people, which are now known out in the plains as the, Denes are now, I think they're Navajos, if I'm not mistaken. It's Navajos. You have Dakota, Dakota, all these peoples. Ancient Moors. All right? But their consciousness was changed with Indian schooling, the learning of English, the learning of Christianity, and the removal of these sciences and this knowledge by teaching their kids and indoctrinating them with something and separate them from their other generations and know what was happening. All right?
Was it Moors in New Orleans?
Yes. Moors in New Orleans, Moors all over North America. All of these 50 states that were Moors. Okay? When you talk about the Hopi, when you talk about the Shoshone, when you talk about the Apache, okay, you're talking about Yaqui Indians. Anybody ever read Carlos Castaneda? Like the teachings of the Yaqui Indians from Don Quixote? Don Quixote was a Yaqui Indian. He was a Moor. And those peoples came up through into Arizona, Arizona and Utah and all these different places, and wound up populating with those people to develop the people that you know now as peace. You know? The people that you know now as the natives of those lands. All right? And they had to adopt the consciousness of being Indian to separate themselves from a connection that would destroy the federal jurisdiction. Okay? Let's see. Where we at? Now go back one. Okay, keep going, yeah. All right, so this is, now when we talk about Reconstruction, what I'm showing you here is how determined the Spaniards were. Okay? You see the lynching of the peoples, as well as the plunder of Jewish children. Okay? This happened in Spain. It happened in the Carib Islands. It happened in Arawak country, Haiti, Dominican Republic. It happened everywhere. Okay? The science was, who knows the knowledge? Who knows the knowledge? Separate them, kill them.
But the Moors ruled Spain.
What's that?
But the Moors were ruling Spain at the time. Right. So when was this happening?
Well, the Ben Ishmael tribe, they're talking about the 13th century. They're talking about the 1200s. Right? When you talk about the expansion out of Maghreb into Spain, okay, it's a little bit separate. Okay, we're going on a little tangent for a quick second. The Moors came out of Spain in 711 AD, or they came into Spain in 711 AD, okay, and they ruled it till about 1492. Okay, so in Spain, the New World Order took a little bit longer. Okay, what I'm talking about is what is known in Moorish consciousness, or what is known in the ancient times as Andalusia. Okay, Andalusia was the ancient name for Spain. Okay, that name was changed into a corporate republic, or a corporate fiction, through Isabella and Ferdinand, once they got rules from the last kings or the last Moorish sultans. I believe the brother's name was King Boabdil. And King Boabdil was the one who handed the keys over to Isabella and Ferdinand, meaning the keys to the city of Granada, the last Moorish empire in Spain to have rule. And this was in 1492. And when do they say Columbus set sail? 1492. Never sailed the ocean, blue, 14, whatever. They had to start their history at the last point of Moorish rule, because prior to that, there was evidence predating their experience and their knowledge. And from what I've learned from brothers like Van Sertima, it wasn't even until the 1800s that 90% of European people could even read. You know what I'm saying? There were Moors that went over to Spain and went over to parts of Sicily and the Pyrenees and France and taught people how to bathe, change clothes. You know what I'm saying? And the reality is that this knowledge has been on the earth for a long time. Not exactly what happened to them, but just the ancient knowledge of how to navigate mathematics, these different sciences that our people understood. They made that recreation of history, provided these political constructs and lands that gave federal jurisdiction, and all the while, as they moved forward, teaching the babies the new consciousness, went back to cover their tracks, to burn the books, and translate them into other languages. The ancient science you know as medicine, all these things come out of Kemet, come out of ancient Egypt. And the Arabs, or the Moors in northern Africa, became the custodians of that knowledge. And when that knowledge proceeded into Europe, eventually as the takeover became final, those books were translated out of Arabic into Spanish. And all of a sudden, hey, cultural enlightenment. And here comes the University of Oxford and all these different schools, when Moors actually built those schools. Okay?
Why did King Boab have a duel and accuse Ferdinand?
Well, what was happening was there was a worldwide takeover, if you will. All right, he had no choice, because the Christian armies, through the ascensions of the Crusades, began to get stronger and stronger and stronger. All right. So you had a series of about 7 or 8 crusades where pilgrims who wanted to proceed from Europe into the Holy Land needed protection. Because that time, any Moor who saw a Christian, and when I say Christian, I'm talking specifically about European Christian, okay? When they saw them without any type of guidance or any type of national banner, these people were taken into slavery and sold on the continent. Okay? Anytime you move forward into international waters without a flag or the auspices or the right from a specific government, you was hijacked. Okay? when the Moors were expelled out of Spain, they wound up in a situation where they could not actually conduct business like they used to, through the Ashkenazi Jews as well as connections with other Europeans who did their business and interface for them. So they took to the seas. When you see movies like Pirates of the Caribbean, that's talking about your grandfather. That's why all these brothers are wrapped up in turbans with these crazy beards looking Turkish. Those was Moors. And they were on the seas looking for people who didn't have the right to proceed in international business. And they jacked them. They were all over. And they even came up as far as New York. Right here in New York, right there near the Hudson River, right on the basis of the George Washington Bridge, you see a lighthouse now. And that lighthouse was built over a whole hanging post that the federal government used to hang Moors or hang pirates at because they was running around robbing people. It was hoods. Because they got their money taken from them, so they had to start flipping. All right? What you see here is, oh boy, okay. This is what is known as the Continental Flag. All right? And when I talk about the Continental Flag, I'm talking roughly from 1400s till about 1786. Okay? Right up in that upper right-hand corner is what is known as the Cedar Tree of Lebanon. Okay? Lebanon. The Cedar Tree of Lebanon. And what that flag is representing is the resurrection of the Moorish Empire once that rule started to decline. Okay? That decline eventually became final once the Moors lost their final footing place where they were grouped together in Spain. But these Moors were all over the world, okay? From Europe to Russia to all these different places. Okay? And our grandfathers wanted to resurrect what was understood as far as Egypt was concerned. Cultural enlightenment, cultural awareness, sound mind, and all government balance. Right? And what they did was resurrect this knowledge through the Articles of Confederation, which were the laws. Right. This was the continental flag for the United Sovereign States.
So this predates the Old Glory.
This predates Old Glory, definitely. You're talking about the 15th century now. All right? Now, that Iroquois flag that I just showed you was another flag similar to this flag, okay, of Moors who were at the same level of consciousness with the understanding of government prior to the birthing of this nation we know now, okay? Under the laws of the Iroquois Confederacy, the law of peace, there was a three-party system. Legislative, judicial, and executive. When Ben Franklin and all these brothers came over here in the 1700s, those were the Moors that they learned ideas about democracy through. Okay? That flag is actually the oldest draft of the Constitution that there is.
What happened to that flag?
Which one?
This one.
No, not this flag. I was talking about the Heart of the Shrine. This
Oh,
flag.
okay.
This flag here.
Okay.
All right.
But then what happened to this flag?
This flag was flown in a different portion of that same confederacy. Remember, you talk about United Nations, right? They're all together, but you still see Ghana, you still see Sweden, you still see all these different peoples. All these different peoples have different reflections on the same law. All right?
Is that the cherry tree that George Washington, is that the flag that had the cherry tree?
Well, this is relative to it. It's relative to it. Like, it's not specifically a flag that we're talking about when we get to George Washington, but what that cedar tree of Lebanon represents is that family root, okay? And that growing of the Aboriginal families. And eventually this flag was taken down in Massachusetts once the colonies started to establish their control over the colonies, okay? Talking about the Federalist people. These colonies were not set up by Europeans. Understand? These colonies were set up by Longhouse people, Haudenosaunee. In North America, the natives here recognized they were at a real difficult situation karmically. Because this European, the term slave comes from the term Slavic. People of the Circassian regions, people near Russia, Poland, Finland, all of these places. They were snatched up off the coast and sold on the continent. Okay? In Europe, the reason why you don't see any evidence of the African or the Moorish experience is because the harems that these brothers had were over 200 deep. And they started impregnating their mistresses. And 4 generations down the line, little Peter don't even know that his grandfather's name was Abdul Sultan Ali Fallah. When you see movies like William Wallace, okay, those serfs under feudalism, which was an earlier form of federalism, were actually indeed persecuted by the king. But that king wasn't no white man. He looked like Colin Powell. That king was an ancient, was a Moor of the ancient descent who wound up becoming enlightened over time, the same way the slave masters here figured out that it was cheaper to impregnate their own slaves. You understand? But he was still a Moor. There's a very huge misconception as to what Moor is. It's not just being brown, it's being of a sovereign descent as well. All right? So this flag here is what you see was flown in Massachusetts. When the colonies got set up, the Moors here figured out we need to better our karma. Because the Europeans in Europe have no nationality, have no rights, have no nothing. All they know is serfdom. They're allowed to live on the land in exchange for work. That's all they get. Over here, we were setting up situations where we dedicated a certain amount of land up into the Ohio Valley, where we gave them federal zones that they could conduct business and understand the consciousness of nationality. Not actually own or gain right to produce or to conduct themselves in a national manner or in the form of a national, which is what we were, but to understand it business-wise. And our job was to take revenue or taxes from those different colonies to pay tribute. And that tribute on one end went to England, went to the king, who was another Moor. And another portion of that tribute went to the sultans in Morocco. Why Morocco? Because those were the Moors over there that had not only helped auspices those, or set up or give or grant the right for this stuff to happen, but those were the Moors through the years who had control of the gold trade. Okay? So England, Europe, all these different countries in Europe were suddenly indebted to these people. Okay? And it's the same thing that happened with the Civil War. Okay? The southern states were indebted to the northern ones because they were providing goods, but their labor was free. In the north, they were getting the goods and also dealing with it on a whole other level. Now, what started happening was they figured, we have to end this because we're paying our laborers, but in the South, their labor is free. You see what I'm saying? And they owe us money anyway because we're the only place they can export their business. So they had to remove the consciousness of the republic, which is what the southern states were operating under. In a republic, it is okay to have slavery. It's okay to own slaves. But what the Moors here figured out how to do was to get out of the karma. What they said was, we have been enslaving this white man so long, it's going to come back to us and affect us. We have to put a stop to it. We're going to auspice these 13 colonies to allow them to have a jurisdiction where they can do business, learn the consciousness of nationality, and take tribute from that to pay to the King of England and pay to the sultans in Morocco. And then in the 1600s, they abolished white Christian slavery. Okay? They said you can no longer own any white Christian slaves. No Muslim, Moor, Mohammedan, Jew, all these different descriptions of everybody but white Christian slaves. What does that tell you? There were Jews, there were Moors, there were Muslims, there were Christians in these countries prior to the 1600s darker than everybody here. And they put an end to white slavery in an effort to better the karma. But what they didn't do was put an end to brown slavery. Because back then, white and black had to do with caste, not color. It's just standing in society, like the Brahmin system in India. But that eventually got changed to color too. Yeah. So we wound up in a situation where brown people are still allowed to be enslaved. So as a result, they started bringing in huge herds of Moors that did not have the consciousness from the continent. And those that knew what was happening here were eventually isolated with their knowledge and challenged by a new understanding of the world that was given through the history they were writing, and eventually they became outnumbered. because you bring people here together who speak different languages, they have no way of communicating, no way of connecting. So you can teach them what you want. And that's what happened to us. Okay? So when you're talking about the flag, the continental flag, that was flown underneath the Articles of Confederation, which was what governed this new resurrection of the Moorish Empire here in the States prior to the one that was established through federal jurisdiction. All right? And eventually, right, that jurisdiction was what set up the United States. Okay? Prior to the federal jurisdiction that we understand, there was a governing right here in America under Moors. The president that you understand as George Washington was the president of the corporation America, the federal one. Okay? This brother here was the first president of the original one, and his name is John Hanson Bay. Okay? John Hanson Bay was a Moor who not only helped develop the government, but and a lot of the articles or what have you, but he was given the first right to rule as a Moor. Okay? And if you look on the back of the $2 bill, obviously it's too small right here to see, but if you look right there, about 4 or 5 persons down in the front row, you will see a dramatic contrast in hue. So one brother on the left, or one brother on the left, and then the brother on the right. That dark-skinned black Moor is John Hanson.
That explains why they got rid of $2.
There you go.
Yeah. They don't want to see it. They don't want to see it. Right? So you had a situation where there were 8 U.S. presidents prior to George Washington that governed the United Sovereign States.
A lot of people say that, but I've seen information when it was 14.
14 what?
And I have an article from 1970 in the Smithsonian magazine, the documents over 14.
Or the 14 rulers?
Yeah.
Okay. But it's, I mean, again, brother, it gets deep, you know what I'm saying, in the sense that there is a possibility that there were rulers that existed as the Articles of Confederation were being put into place. However, the one that we understand that auspiced this government that gave federal jurisdiction to these people existed of 8 rulers. One of them was John Hanson Bay. Another of them was a brother named Cyrus Griffin. Another more. Okay? And the list goes down, right? We have Elias Boudinot, right? Thomas Mifflin, Richard Henry Lee, okay? John Hancock, who we know, you're John Hancock, right? The brother that they're credited to being a white man in American history, right? You have Stanley Gorham, right? Arthur Sinclair, and Cyrus Griffin. Cyrus Griffin was the one that I mentioned, okay? And all of these rulers were ruling underneath what they called the Articles of Confederation, which is the law or the government that existed to govern over the United Sovereign States, okay? Now this conglomerate of sovereign states existed from Canada all the way to Greenland, but it had different factions under the same law, all right? And this was the one that was established in North America to resurrect the empire again of Moors.
Why did he carry an English name, John Hanson?
He didn't.
What was that about?
It's not English, you feel me? When you talk about English, okay, there's a huge misconception of what that is, okay? When you talk about even places like Scotland, okay, in the 12th and 13th centuries, you have brothers like James I coming over there to establish Scotland, okay? There were 7 provinces that existed prior to the evolution of Scotland. 4 of them were ruled by Moors, with the people that they call Normans. What does the word black mean in French? Noir. The Normans. The same thing as Egyptians, Ethiops, burnt-faced people. Ruling shit. Pardon the cousin, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you're heated, right? But whatever. The point being is, his name wasn't English, okay? The title Bey, added to the last of his name, is a land title. It's a title to land, it's a title of the nobles that had sovereign jurisdiction to govern and rule over those lands. And you see other ones too. The sister, his name is Myra L. Okay, Ali, Day, Pasha, all these different peoples, these were different land titles that they attached to their names to accredit themselves to a Moorish dissension in ancient times.
You know the movie Idi Amin, he talks about, he dressed like a Scottish.
Right.
I mean, is he going back to his Moorish roots or something? But when he does
to a certain degree, yeah. Yeah. Definitely, man.
So what is George Washington?
George Washington comes into this after all of these Moorish rulers had established jurisdiction and rule. Okay, Cyrus Griffin was the last, the same way King Boabdil was the last in 1492 in Spain. Okay? What they were tending to do was set up a jurisdiction where they could give these people the right to do business, learn the idea of nationality, because they didn't have one before, right? But they didn't really have an intention to actually free this man and turn him into a national. I'm talking about the European, the white man. Okay? They didn't really want to free him, but they were trying to make it a better situation for him. He was still a slave, but over here he could have a quarter acre of land and grow potatoes and learn how to grow, make vodka and whatnot. And then eventually they lessened his term, and they gave it to us in history to understand it through indentured servitude. These crooks from England came over here and they had an indentured servitude service for 7 years, and then they were set free. Yeah, but what they didn't tell you was that the Moors didn't really intend to set them free. They just didn't have them under the bondage they had on the surface. Okay? So they were set free, but not really. They just had more land to do their business. And eventually they figured out they weren't ever intended to be set free, and that's when the white men flipped. Okay? And George Washington came along as the 9th president. And his jurisdiction was not over the sovereign United States that we understood through the Articles of Confederation. His jurisdiction was under the United States of America. Okay? You have the United Sovereign States, the original flag, okay? And then you have the United States for America. The United Sovereign States put together a form of their government to allow these people to understand nationality the best way they thought they could in a corporate fashion. And that's what George Washington was intended to do. Govern that corporate aspect of the United States of America while paying tribute to the Moors and the Sultans at the same time and acknowledging the national sovereign right of our grandfathers. And eventually they figured out how to usurp that power, teach our grandkids that we had no connection to that dissension, and shut them out of rule. But it was a gradual process. It didn't really happen until about 1865, 1870. Okay? And that's what a lot of the Civil War was about, fortifying that takeover.
Speaking of John Hanson, and you said that the name is not really... You stated that the name is not really English.
Right.
And relevance to that, the Moors that were put into slavery, and correct me if I'm wrong, given the agnomens, cognomens, and nomens of the slave masters, how does that play?
All right. It gets deep, brother. Like, unfortunately, we don't have as much time as we'd like to. This is just a brief introduction, but when you talk about the names of the ancient or the elder English, Dutch, Scottish, Welsh, all these different people who had nobility or the right to come through these lands to do business like they did, those names were Moorish names. Okay? Amongst the Scottish, you look at the name O'Malley, Callahan, all these things. That O, okay, was from ancient times. It was from Kemet, from Egypt. It represented family. Family of Callahans, family of what have you, okay? The same way with the word Duff, the word, all these different names. The word Falkirk, okay? The Falkirk, you know, what it came from was the ancient, what was the language it's called? Gaelic, okay? And in the ancient Gaelic, what was happening was the word Falkirk was the word for spotted serf or church. And Spotted Church was a reference to the Moors that were Christians in those times at the church. So, what?
The Mariscos, sí.
Mariscos.
So the purpose of amending or correcting your name by either changing it altogether or putting an L or Bay on the end of it would be to get away from the corporate or chattel part of it, not so much the name.
You don't actually have to add those suffixes to your name to get away from the corporate aspect of it. You don't have to. But what it's doing is reconnecting you with your noble title and your right to noble dissension in these Americas. Alright? So, I hope everybody's still with me. I know it's a lot of information out of that. But the cherry tree, okay? I cannot tell a lie. When I was 9 years old, I chopped down a cherry tree. Okay? See a picture of George here? I had one tree, or with his, doing this thing. And then in the back, right, you see a picture of who? Brown skin folks, okay? The reason for that is the cherry tree was a representative of the national headdress that you see on this brother here. Okay? This headdress, known as the fez, was eventually adopted into the ways of the westernized Masons. Okay? The ones that understand and learn their ways out of their connections with the Moors and the ancient ones who knew when the Crusades went down. Okay? They came over there to the east trying to take over, realized they couldn't, and then realized that they could build with some of the Moors, and the Moors didn't trust them, so they put them through 35 years of study to show themselves approved to be able to deal with them and unite and take down the faction of each other's enemies. All right? This national headdress represents the full circumference of the brain, of the mind. Okay? That temple is raised to a flat level to show the incompletion as well as the focus of the cycle. Okay? In the dollar symbol, you will see a connection of that flattened and then an eye overseeing it. Okay? And that eye is supposed to be the eye of providence. It goes into all these things. I don't want to go too far to it, but what that fez represents is the full circumference of knowledge, what they call in ancient times natural philosophy. Okay? Natural philosophers in ancient times didn't just study life or what they thought were perspectives of life. Natural philosophers studied physics, chemistry, law, chemet, alchemy, chem, the elements of the body. Our ancient ancestors understood how to deal with this science very ill. And they got so ill with it, they went crazy. And they started flipping. And our job is to focus back with this science without flipping on the white man. Because if we do that, we're going to run back in a karmic cycle that's going to put us in a very, very difficult position again.
With that being said about the Moors teaching the Europeans, or what's called in history the Pilgrims,
right,
about governing themselves,
yeah.
Where do the Moors stand, or what was their point of view when the Pilgrims started the slave trade among the blacks after they killed off the Indians?
When they talk about the slave trade, they pretty much dedicate a time frame of about the 16 or 1700s to its beginning. All right? But the reason why they did that was because they didn't want you to understand their separateness from the ability to bring people around the world. They didn't have the knowledge to actually navigate like that. Moors were bringing those Christians and bringing those African slaves as well all around the world. Okay?
So where do they stand in terms of what the Pilgrims did?
What I'm telling you, brother, is they were in part orchestrating.
I see. Okay.
We sold ourselves out.
I see. Ooh. Okay.
See what I'm saying? You had Moors, there were black plantation owners in South Carolina in the 17th century, lighter than everybody here. and there were white ones darker than everybody here. It had to do with caste. All this quantum definition of blood, all this quantum definition of 16% Cherokee and 42% Arapaho and all this different shit was a way to reclassify who the people were, so they could own the copyrights to those identifications and then remove people of their right to their sovereign nationality. There were so many African or Moorish women here in the Americas that owned slaves. It was crazy. They owned a lot of them. So to them, it made no difference because the consciousness was different. It had to do with caste. Brown, black, it don't matter. You own slaves, so what? In a republic, that was okay, and that's what the South was functioning under, the whole sovereign way. But the North was adopting the understanding of democracy through the three-party system that they wanted to use corporately to seize control over the sovereign rule. And they had us play the fool, looking like, well, we're trying to destroy slavery and free the black man. That's what they taught us, but they didn't tell you who that black man was. It wasn't us. That black man was them. The black man that they talking about freeing during emancipation, civil rights, all these things, wasn't us. Okay? It was white people that they were trying to free. But they weren't trying to let them be completely free. And the white man figured out he wasn't going to get free like they were promised with this jurisdictional extension of United Sovereign States. So you have the first through 7 articles of the Constitution, okay? Moorish. Okay? First what? The articles 1 through 7, the original Constitution. That was organized under the Continental flag or underneath the Continental Congress. Okay? The amendments. Corporate. That's what George Washington and these dudes start coming in. They amended them, attached them to our form of government to allow them to function in a corporate fashion, but never really intended to set them free. And the white man found out and got him. So he started flipping. Then he asked him, the Moors asked the Europeans to help them in their fight amongst themselves. All over the world, all over North America. And that's a whole other conversation, but what wound up happening was when they turned in their guns at the end of that war, the Europeans did. And they started flipping, you know. In a nutshell, okay, I would love to go into Muju Ali and talk a little bit more just about like some of the Moors that helped to resurrect this consciousness, but I know we press for time and it's a lot to focus. I mean, we could...
Due to all the lies that we've been told, and us, all the information hidden and everything, is it a way to get your DNA so you can have solid proof of who you are?
Sure. All types of blood tests being done.
Do you have any phone numbers for DNA?
I personally don't.
Right here, this sister right here. Because with our paperwork, when we file at the state and county level, notifying them who we are, we encourage people to do the DNA testing so that you are who you are. I am what I am. And that is key, that we begin to reconnect ourselves through the landmass, and we cannot do that as African Americans. This sister right here, she will
What's this?
Oh. That's a stamp. This right here is a stamp dedicated to what they call the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. It was a stamp that used to be in circulation in the Americas recognizing a Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the United States and Morocco, known as the Treaty of Marrakesh. Okay? The Treaty of Marrakesh was established between the sultans in Morocco, giving the Europeans here, who are now being brought up through the Articles of Confederation, the right to go conduct business in the Straits of Gibraltar and all throughout southern Sicily, Italy, and along the coast of Africa. Because prior to that, like I said, if you didn't have a national jurisdiction to give you the right to be in international waters, you was hijacked. So the sultans made a treaty of peace and friendship between the Americas to give them the rights to function under their auspices in Morocco until they could get their own established. And it was actually the hijacking and all of the drama that these Europeans went through getting into Europe that focused them to build the U.S. Navy. Because they needed help. You know what I'm saying? They had no battleships and they was running around and things got difficult. But the Treaty of Marrakesh is very, very significant, very relevant, and proof of an existing conscious contract between lands in Northern Africa that was said to have nothing to do with the developments of ones here in North America.
Can you still get that stamp?
I don't know.
Yeah, you can. We have the website where you can, I believe you can still order. But it's important that we understand this Treaty of Marrakesh that he's referring to it was done in 1786 and then again in 1787. The Morocco on the continent did not come into existence until the 1950s. So the Morocco was here in Philadelphia. This is, you know, all of everything we've been told is a lie, basically. You know, and so it is clear that you have to start to put the pieces together and understand what's what. You know, so this is our ancient flag. You know, because again, as I said, the Morocco on the continent did not come into existence until into 1950. I believe it's 57.
I'm pretty sure it was 57. This flag right here was what you see flown in the country of Morocco now. Okay? It represents the 5-point star of men. Right? Those who understand from 5% nation wisdom, that's the arm, leg on head. Circumference, a lot. Okay? That flag used to fly in the southern states. That flag used to fly regions near Texas. And from what I understand now, it's potential that it might have even flown in places like Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Okay? Because brotherly love was a connection to the ones who were loved. Okay? The Moors. In Spanish, it's amore. Right? They were talking about the ones who were loved. What did they say God is? Love. Love. That was us. The gods ruling the earth. You know what I'm saying? All right. So yeah. So long story short, just got a couple of pictures and stuff. This is Noble Drew Ali. This is the man that returned the consciousness of Moorish divinity and national right to North American peoples. Okay, and he was born from what it's understood on a Cherokee reservation down in Quabbin country, which is in the Smoky Mountains of North Carolina, and organized a temple and a series of temples that were dedicated to resurrecting the consciousness of Moorish peoples in America to help us get back to where we need to be as Moors. What you see here is the flag of the United Sovereign States. Okay, we talked about the branching off into the corporate faction underneath George Washington. Okay, the United States of America, which is what we were all subject to jurisdiction-wise through citizenship. Okay, this flag here represents the United Sovereign States. Okay, the nation states that eventually were the areas of the Shoshone and the Kickapoo and all of these people, but developed into colonies and the states and their expansion west. But remind you, those colonies and those expansions were still under the guises of Moorish rule. They were just allotted to allow these corporate people to do business so they could extract tribute and pay the kings. So you're talking about the nation state of Kentucky, the nation state of Illinois, just like you see in Georgia and Yemen and all these places across over in Europe. It's the same thing. They had rights, they had their own governments and their own law, and the states to this day still have that law. But eventually it got usurped underneath the corporate jurisdiction, and now they all got the power taken from them. What you see here is the original 13 stripes and 48 stars. That's the 13 stripes and 48 stars, okay? That was how long the Moorish rule in America existed. Okay? We didn't really lose control until the 1860s and 70s. And that's when the federal people stepped in, and in the early 1910s, that's when they started making things difficult for the world economy so that the world would be in debt to them and they could run things.
I just want to say, notice how the stripes in the other one, in this one, they're perfectly aligned in order. You know, the one that's now, it's not aligned.
Right. Stars. Right.
Right.
And for what we understand, like the reason for that alignment is because what happens is in the flag with 50 stars, you'll see the 6 and the 5, the 6 and the 5, the 6 and the 5. And what that is telling you, from what I understand from Brother Phil, is that there is a government within a government. And that's why those stars are off kilted like that, to show you that there's something working behind what they're putting to you in your face. As far as government is concerned, they're supposed to be acting as us, but they're not us. They're not Moors. We gave them the right to function corporately, and in the case of event, none of us could stand up to rule. They were to act as president. And that's what George Bush is doing. He's acting as you. Until you get back to the point and put him in his corporate fashion. He ain't going nowhere. They ain't going nowhere. Even in the Bible, they talk about the kingdom of heaven, right? To give you the demographic or the geographical layout. Evil ain't going nowhere. It's just, this is where the righteous live. You know what I'm saying? That faction will never disappear. We're just here to oversee that they don't hold our lives accountable for their own ignorance. Right? And these are some pictures of some other Moors. Okay, we can flood through these. Here you see a Nordic Native American brother matched up with a brother from China with a little bit of Indian descent. Okay, these connections were happening all over. Okay, right here we have some. I think the Trobrians. It's not Trobrians, the Arawaks, right? Okay, the Arawaks are again in the Caribbean region. Okay, keep going. These are actually some, ironically, people I know. There's some people in the room that know. Tess, you see Reggie? Yeah. Right? There's some. These are some modern day reflections of some of the Moors that exist here now. You know what I'm saying? Some of us. You know, they so-called Afro-American Indians, people of African and Indian descent, that still powwow to this day, right? And these are some. What are these girls talking about? Arawaks, designated as Africans. They talk about Maroon society. They talk about this huge fusion of African and Indian blood and people that want to live in the hills. And all of these nations. That shit, it's not that simple. These are the Indians. The real ones. And they say, well, no, they have to be African because they call it the human complexion had to come after. It's not like that. All right? Again, some more sisters to show you the example of our presence on this continent. These are Native Americans. All right? And that's pretty much the deal, you know? To wrap this all up, okay, I know a lot of people, it's been a long time and a long focus. What you need to understand is there's a lot of work and a lot of documentation to understand our experience in the Americas done. The problem is the majority of the people allowed to write about this experience are sworn to oath not to allow the full consciousness to be available to the people. So they're only going to...
Okay. Now, Brother Clay did an excellent job, and even though it cut into a lot of what I wanted to say, it's very necessary, because that's the part of history that we're never told about, and it's extremely key that you have that in your consciousness if you choose to go the path of reclaiming your nationality and your identity and documenting your status in the public record. He pointed out that they superimpose the corporate identity on them, and we need to clearly understand that that's exactly what's happening to us right now in 2006. We've been imposed artificial, fictitious corporate identity has been superimposed over the flesh and blood man and woman. And what I'm going to discuss And I'm going to try to move briefly because I'm like way behind schedule. I know it's late. I know you all are tired. And, you know, you've been here a good portion of the day. So I'm going to try to get everything in, but as quickly as possible. And if we can hold all questions to the end, if you can write it down. One of the ways that they impose the corporate fictitious identity on us is by putting us under an admiralty jurisdiction. What they did is they moved the waterline back and therefore put everybody under a corporate jurisdiction. And whenever you go into your banks, your public schools, your courtrooms, and you see the flag with the gold fringe flag on it, that's letting you know that you're in an admiralty jurisdiction. And basically, it is the law of the sea that is taking precedence. Do you have the picture of the admiralty flag so that you can see it? And it has the appearance of a regular flag, but you will see the gold fringes around it. And every place you turn, you will see that. Like I said, the banks, the schools, the courtrooms, the all public places, you know. And basically, when you're in this admiralty jurisdiction, they are identifying you as a ship or a vessel. You know, because as flesh and blood entities, they have no jurisdiction. And we have to be clear on that. That regulation, ordinance, codes, executive orders, they all apply to corporate entities, to corporate fictions, to strawmen, the all capital name. Just getting into admiralty a bit so that you can see what I'm talking about. There's the law of the land, and then there's the law of the water, and that's an admiralty jurisdiction. And all banking and everything is predicated on that. The Statue of Liberty was placed in the water because it represents liberty, like when a sailor gets liberty. The courts, unbeknownst to many of us, are the highest banks on the planet. And as I'm going to go into a little later on to show how the court system is a money-making institution predicated on your straw man. A court, just like you have a basketball court, a tennis court, it's all a big game. It's a big racket. Okay? The judge is the referee. He wears the black robe. He rules from the bench. The bench in Latin means bank. There's the connection between bench, bank, and the whole court system. The court is the highest bank ever. The judge rules from the bank. You find banks on both sides of a river, like the river bank. The flow of currency, again, dealing with water, currency. Your money is currency because it is the flow that directs commerce. All ships are female because they're carrying items for money. A ship pulls into a harbor. The captain, capital, has to present to the port of authority a manifest. The manifest has a full description of all the items on the ship. When all the items on the ship represent money, maritime, admiralty products. When a ship is docked, it's called that it sits in its berth, B-E-R-T-H, corresponding with birth, B-I-R-T-H. When you were born, your mother's water broke. You came out of this and you were issued a birth certificate. That's the manifest. Because you're under international law. you see, you're seen as a maritime admiralty vessel in commerce. Your mother delivered you in a hospital. You came through her birth canal. Are we seeing the connection with earth and water and admiralty? You were delivered in a delivery room. And in essence, basically, the birth certificate was used to deliver you over to the state. Sometimes you may lose a product. For example, on a ship, a TV may break, or a child may be born stillborn. You are issued a death or birth certificate. These are all manifests. All of these words and terms are Maritime Admiralty International banking law. We are all seen as making money for the system. All governments, courts, lawyers, judges, churches all operate, yes, I did say churches, in admiralty. This is why all churches are divided into denominations, such as 10s, 20s, 30s. Okay? Are you with me?
Oh, yeah.
All are under admiralty. We've been in admiralty since 1868. Prior to this, all Americans were considered sovereign. In 1868, a company was incorporated as the United States Corporation, stipulated that all employees would be called citizens. President Bush is the head of a privately owned company, corporation, must understand how words are used to enslave you. The current banking system as we know it was started by the Knights Templar. You know, also this is connected to all the attorneys. Most people don't understand that the Bar Association stands for the British Accreditation Regency. We've never been separated from the crown of England. Okay, government is 2% judicial, and 90% of the government has no delegation of authority to rule. But everything is based on assumption and presumption. And also, with the judges not having proper standing, any immunities that they may have is lost. Because they don't have, they're all administrative judges. We have an Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 courts. Article 1 courts are admiralty. Article 2 courts are administrative. And Article 3 courts are the only sovereign courts in America. And most of us, when we're dealing with the court system, we're dealing in Article 2 administrative courts, where they only have jurisdiction over the straw man. I want to get into a little bit about the straw man. Do you have that? Okay, because that's key.
Go over the course just one more time. Myra, Articles 1, 2, and 3. Can you repeat that?
Article 1 is maritime admiralty jurisdiction. You know, and pretty much all the courts are under that, because when you walk in there, you see the gold fringe flag. And then there's Article 2 courts, administrative, and Article 3 courts are for sovereign. And many of us, when we walk into the courtroom, we're going in as a straw man, as you'll see the all-capital name on the caption. So all of these constitutional rights that you believe that you have, it does not apply to a corporate entity. It only applies to a flesh and blood man or woman. So, unbeknownst to us, they have erected a lot of clever ways of changing our identity and changing our status, completely unbeknownst to us. And we're thinking things are one way, but there's a whole nother esoteric dynamic going on.
Do you have your constitutional rights in Article 3 court?
If you come in there with your correct standing, everything is about correct standing.
So all those court facades, how do they proceed if you don't come in with correct standing?
Well, you, number one, if you're there, you fought like hell to be there. Because everything is presumed, you're presumed to be the straw man. Okay. We also need to understand that they are several, at least 3 different United States. There's the United States of America. I have some visualization. How's it going? Did you show the Admiralty flag already? Okay, so we can go right to the story. Yeah, this is a flag that you'll see everywhere. And this is not the sovereign flag of the states, the United States. Could you go down the yellow French flag? It also represents martial law. So it's literally when you walk into the bank and everything, that there's no nation and no constitution. So you need to understand when you see this, that is the jurisdiction that you're in. Let me go to The Wizard of Oz was created, I believe, in '38, right after the entire bankruptcy. Going into The Straw Man, this was a movie that was created by master masons, and basically they was explaining to you what they had done. Just moving real quickly, the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, and basically they create money, they sell it to the United States Treasury at a much higher profit, you know, and then the debt of that is passed on to the American people. From 1913 to 1929, well, even backing up before that, according to the Constitution, the only lawful form of currency is gold and silver. And basically, there was a supply of gold available, you know, and creating all of this debt through the relationship with the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, the debt became unsurmountable. And I believe they were, how much is it, $22 billion worth of gold that was accessible in circulation, and the debt of the United States alone was $11 million. So by the time we got to 1929, the commerce, the stock market, the economy, everything crashed. So many of us have learned in school about the New Deal program by President Roosevelt. My whole thing is the New Deal was, the real deal of the New Deal is it was a raw deal. You know, at that point is when they created the Maternity Act, and they forced people to file birth certificates with the state. Then a bond was placed on the back of the birth certificate and then sold to the international bankers. And this is how the United States Corporation recovered from the whole stock market. And in essence, through the straw man and the birth certificate, they created an all capital name entity with the same exact names as you have. If you look on anything you're doing in commerce, has absolutely nothing to do with the flesh and blood man or woman. If you look on your driver's license, your birth certificate, your voter's registration card, your credit cards, your bills, it's all dealing with this all capital name entity. And as we were told in English class, a person's name A man or woman's name is spelled with upper and lowercase name. When you use all caps, you're creating a completely different entity, known as an egregious creature, as you can look it up in Black's Law Dictionary, as strenuous homo, straw man. All of these is basically they've created an artificial entity with the same name as you. And because you were never told about it, you are going around representing this artificial creature and standing in place for it. But there is a difference between the name your parents named you and the all capital name entity that's navigating in commerce.
Excuse me, sister. When we're called into the courts by our all capital name, how can we defend ourselves as far as being sovereign? Article 1, 2, and 3. How do we get to Article 3?
But that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother life, getting into an Article 3 court. But the most important thing, and what I'm ultimately talking about today, is how to rebut the presumption that you and the straw man are one and the same, or that you are willing to be surety for the straw man.
Thank you.
Wait, go back. Okay, this is The Wizard of Oz, as I was saying, which was written by master masons, and they were basically among themselves communicating with each other, letting them know of the entire scam that was going on in American commerce. It says, can you read between the lines and see the author's intent? The Wizard of Oz was an allegory for the condition of America in the 1930s, following the stock market crash and the factual bankruptcy of the United States. Kansas was the geographical center of the U.S., the heartland of America. And in the movie, it deals with came a tornado, a stock market crash, a whirlwind of confusion that followed, which swept Dorothy Toto into a new artificial dimension above the solid ground of Kansas. Okay, after the bankruptcy, Kansas was no longer Kansas. It was now KS, an artificial corporate venue of bankrupt United States and newly established federal territory, part of the federal zone and operating under color of law. Before you go to the next one, we need to understand that strategic, calculated, organized steps have been taken to move us away from our flesh and blood, God-given selves. I first talked about, I wanted to talk about earlier natural law. We are all from birth coming from natural law, the Creator's law. And when we enter into these jurisdictions, they're doing everything humanly possible to place us in another alien jurisdiction other than ourselves. With this whole bankruptcy, in order to, when they removed the gold and silver out of circulation and gave us this fiat Federal Reserve notes, which have no value, they also had to put you in a federal jurisdiction. The United States itself consists of 10 square miles within Washington, D.C. That's why it's not a state. It's the District of Columbia. And then certain states contracted with the federal government, and that's how the umbrella is spread it out. But in order to fool the people and create an artificial reality existing at the same time as your reality, they created what's known as the Buck Act, the B-U-C-K. The Buck Act is the beginning of where we use the zip codes. When you use a zip code, you are in a federal territory, and that's where the federal government has jurisdiction. And when you use the two-letter abbreviation in the state's name, you are also placing yourself in the federal jurisdiction, in the federal zone. And all of these things are things we do every day No one ever warned us, prepared us, told us, and we acquiesced out of ignorance into these artificial jurisdictions, and then they have jurisdiction over the flesh and blood man. And it's operating under color of law. Color of law is the appearance or the semblance of law without any substance. It's a legal, contractual right jurisdiction. Okay, comes now the straw man, the all capital letter, the artificial representation, the artificial, operative words here, representation of the American sovereign. The straw man had no brain. He could not think or act for himself. Some people without brains do not do an awful lot of talking. Of course, I'm not bright about doing things. You know, so the symbolism in the movie, the straw man is saying he had no brains. The straw man is an artificial entity. A lot of times when we as sovereigns go to court and they're dealing with the straw man, in answer to your question, brother, we'll give them a certified copy of our birth certificate. There's the straw man. There's the defendant, not the flesh and blood person.
What can be done to come up out of the color of law and still operate?
Rebutting the presumptions through affidavits, which I'm going to get into.
Okay, thank you. Continue. Thank you.
In the song, If I Only Had a Brain, the straw man stated, I'd unravel every riddle for every individual in trouble or pain. Once one discovers his straw man, exists all political and legal mysteries and confusions are resolved. When you take a legal title to the straw man and give him a brain, your brain, he can protect himself from legal trouble. Remember the Tin Man?
Yeah. He had a heart.
What? The Tin Man stands for the tax identification number. That's your Social Security. Okay, they laid it all out in 1938, right in our face. The Tin Man was a hollow man made of metal, a vessel, a vehicle. Remember, the straw man was a vehicle or vessel that can travel in admiralty, in the water jurisdiction. Like the straw man, the Tin Man was missing something too. A heart. But the straw man and the Tin Man were artificial persons. One of the definitions of tin in Webster's dictionary is counterfeit. The Tin Man also represented the mechanical and heartless aspect of commerce and commercial law. Nothing personal, it's just business. The Tin Man carried an axe. The axe is a traditional symbol for God. Interesting fact, the word ace is the etymological related to the word axe. In a deck of cards, the only one above the king is the ace, i.e. God. What about the lion? What did he represent? The king of beasts. The once fearless American had lost their courage. When you think about dealing with the IRS, a UCC constituted corporation, you probably lose a little courage. When you think about dealing with the you may not know it now, but the IRS deals with you strictly under the laws of commerce. And just like the Tin Man, commerce is heartless.
What is UCC?
Uniform Commercial Code. Professor Marvel, in the beginning of the movie, the wizard was represented by the traveling mystic, Professor Marvel. His shingle stated that he was acclaimed by the crowned heads of Europe, past, present, and future. Wow, acclaimed future rulers of Europe before they were crowned. Before bankers stole America, they had already disempowered the monarchies of Europe and looted their kingdom. So as I'm telling you, the Wizard of Oz tells the whole story. Professor Marvel lectured Dorothy of the priest of Isis and Osiris and about the time of Egyptian pharaoh. Sounds like Freemasonry. Did you remember that part in, did anyone remember that from the Wizard of Oz?
Copying the book, vaguely.
Well, who said the book?
Copying the book. I know that the movie and the book probably don't coincide at all.
Right. The slippers. In the movie, Dorothy wore the ruby red slippers. Note the original book by Frank Bond, the slippers were silver. They didn't want to give too much of it. At that same time the book was written, America still had its gold and silver. In the story, Dorothy's slippers carried her just as the stockpile of silver and gold, which then, back to currency, carried the country to a position of prominence. Follow the yellow brick road means follow the trail of stolen gold. Like that movie where Show Me the Money, Where's the Money? Between 1916 and 1933, most of America's gold was hoarded by the private Federal Reserve and shipped to the federal owners in England and Germany. Now, this is the same time period that the Federal Reserve is selling Federal Reserve notes, which is what we use today, which is called money, and they're selling it to the Treasury at a significant interest. And then the Treasury is passing that debt on to the American people. While simultaneously they're doing that, they're taking, in those years, the gold outside of America. The reason was that the Federal Reserve notes could be redeemed in gold, and the use of Federal Reserve notes carried an interest and penalty that could not be paid in gold. When bankruptcy was declared in 1933, American people were required to turn in all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates by May 1st. May Day, this is where you get the famous May Day. The birthday of communist Bavarian in 1776. The birthday of the IRS, I can't see the rest. They're celebrated worldwide on International Workers' Day. All of these days are celebrated under May 1st. A holy day indeed to the wizard and his tribe. I'll let you all read that one. But basically, this was the notice that Franklin Roosevelt had asked all the people to submit all their gold and silver. But again, it's wordplay. They were not asking the sovereign people, but the way it was worded, everyone turned in their gold and silver. Okay. Now, so that the powers that be wouldn't be cited for treason, they passed what's known as the famous House Joint Resolution 192.
Whereas the holding or dealing in gold affect the public interest and are therefore subject to proper regulation and restrictions, and whereas the existing emergency has disclosed that provisions or obligations which purport to give the obligee a right to require payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency are inconsistent with the declared policy of Congress in the payments of debts, and that payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency or in an amount in money of the United States measured thereby is declared to be against public policy, and every obligation heretofore or hereafter incurred shall be discharged upon payment, dollar for dollar, in any court or premises which at the time of payment is legal tender for public and private use.
Now, basically, what they did was they removed the gold and silver from the circulation. They made it where you no longer could pay your debt with legal currency. And remember, this is a House Joint Resolution. It is not the law, and it shouldn't supersede the Constitution. But because the people were not aware of what was going on, they allowed that to pass. But most importantly, it was a clause to protect the powers that be at the time, should the American people ever figure out what they had done. They had a statement in there saying that you're allowed to discharge your debt dollar for dollar. So that if this information was ever disclosed, the powers that be could have plausible deniability, saying that we gave you an alternative. Because actually, House Joint Resolution is a remedy to discharge your debt since you can't pay it. But the only problem is they never taught us how to access the House Joint Resolution to discharge your debt. It's been about 70 years later, and there's small pockets of people that are figuring it out, you know, and using it. Okay, our government struck a deal which traded our gold for furs, worthless paper with green ink on them. If you go to the United States Treasury website like that, point where no matter how warped our perception is, this fake sense of Federal Reserve notes cannot stand in this current economy. And this is why we're preparing for the major crash. Basically, they're saying within the next couple of weeks, Bush is going to intentionally crash the Federal Reserve and devalue the Federal Reserve note by 50%. So if things are hard now, in the next couple of weeks you can expect them to be even harder. And that's why it's key that we begin to start to network with each other, form barters, and try to redirect our energy other than chasing worthless security. Okay, the wicked witch of the West. Thank you. She wanted those slippers, just as the European bankers wanted America's silver and gold supply. The wicked witch of the West, her plan, cover the countryside with poppy flowers.
Yes.
Poppies are the source of heroin, opium, morphine. Symbolically drug them. So basically, you know, that's been a formula that's been utilized throughout history. We've seen that recently in the 90s in our community where crack completely destroyed. We would have been, you really have to understand the importance of timing, because we would have been so far evolved as a people if it was not for crack. The crack destroyed us with those Rockefeller drug laws. It warehoused so many of our brothers for the last 10 years. It is primarily responsible with this whole down low phenomenon because you just warehouse able-bodied men, you know, giving them outrageous sentences.
Yes.
You know, so this is not a new form, is what I'm saying. You know, and we need to understand that as they understand what time it is, they are putting different roadblocks and parameters and barriers to keep us from getting where we need to go. And even you can see 91, 92, this was a crucial year. You know, this is when Daddy Bush came out with his whole New World Order. This is also when the rappers were ill. You had the illest lyrics. You had lyrics that stimulated consciousness. You had, you know, KRS-One, you know, yeah, Wu-Tang. You had Big Daddy Kane. You had You know, and that was right at that era, because that's when the final stuff was being laid down for the New World Order agenda. That's when you began to see the flag laying on its side. Like when you see Bush now speak, instead of the flag being up, you're seeing it down with the flag part down. That's letting you know that everything, Constitution suspended, you're under admiralty, you're a straw man, you know, it's basically a wrap. You know, and at that point was so crucial because subconsciously and unconsciously, even in our music, we knew we needed to make a shift. You know, like they say, shit happens. No, shifts happen. And in 91, 92, we were on the verge of making a serious shift. So they had to introduce all of these different diversions, you know, and crack ruined. And as a social worker, you know, I saw the first line, the degradation that this artificial drug could bring a people to. You know, I don't even want to go there because I'll start getting all emotional. But this is a formula that's used all the time. Okay, the Wicked Witch of the West. The poppy drugs worked on Dorothy, the lion, Toto, the flesh and blood, but had no effect on the scarecrow and the Tin Man, the artificial. Because remember, Dorothy, the lion, and Toto, they're all real. They're flesh and blood. So the drugs, back up a little bit, the drugs had an effect on them, but the Tin Man is artificial, and the scarecrow, so the poppy seeds had no effect on them in the movie. The two of them cried for help. Glenda, the good witch, answered their prayers with a blanket of snow. High heat coated. Which nullified the narcotic effect of the poppies on them. At the last time,
at this time, apart from marijuana, heroin and cocaine in their various forms are the most available, were the most available drugs in the or are the most, are the most
what did it really mean? So there you have it. So basically, when you understand the laws of the universe, the devil, in terms of the corporate consciousness, they always have to tell you what they're doing. And they tell us, basically, they use the movies, they use Hollywood. Hollywood was named after the wood that Merlin, the magician, used in magic. The Hollywood was able to was used to create illusion, and Hollywood is still used to create illusion. But the devil is constantly always telling you what he's doing, but he's telling you it in movies. So you're thinking it's a joke, it's you know, but that's how they tell you the truth. You know, so it's based now on perception.
Just want to know what the Toto represents.
Toto is Toto represent like totality. Total. So, okay, so now that we come into the debt, this is a website with the United States Debt Clock. And the debt, when you go to the website, you see the timer going every minute, because every second the debt is increasing. Now, according to their own laws, the debt can only go but so far, you know, before they need a war. And I believe it's 8-point-something trillion. When we had 9/11, that was the beginning when the debt for the United States superseded the tolerable amount. So this is why they immediately had to create this whole artificial 9/11, because I'm sure I don't have to explain to anybody that whole thing, was orchestrated. And also they had a lot of gold warehoused in the basement of the World Trade. This is why they were under such heavy military security, and it was used to transport that stuff out. This is why even with the remains from the burning building, they moved it quickly from Manhattan into Staten Island and sold it overseas, because if you would test the metal pieces from the building, you would see that it had explosives and everything on there. But as it relates to the debt, it allowed them, this 9/11, people say it's a 2 foot, that was 100 foot, okay? There were so many benefits that the powers that be got from that. It allowed them to create these draconian laws that eroded what was left of the Constitution, with the Patriot Act, with the, all of these other, orders. It allowed them to get rid of a lot of debt, because a lot of the paperwork that was warehoused, the headquarters for banking was in the World Trade Center. So a lot of those receipts, debt, and bills were also dissolved. It allowed them, right, and it allowed them to collect numerous money on the insurance policy, on the storeman and the building itself. Silverman had taken a major billion-dollar insurance policy 6 months before 9/11 occurred.
Is that why it took them 5 years to come up with the World Trade Center Commission?
Right, that's, they're stopping all of the truth that's oozing out of it. Because at this point, when it happened, I'm like, where would the air traffic control? How does this possibly happen unless you were in agreement with it?
Kind of an aircraft buff, and I just kind of found out that the planes that hit the World Trade Center were actually military aircraft.
Right, correct.
With GPU from an F-15.
Right, correct. And they were used with remote control. And the buildings itself were detonated, had bombs, explosives laced throughout the whole building. Because if you dropped a penny, from the top of the World Trade Center, it would have landed at the same time as the building crashed, okay, which is impossible. They tried to give you the bullshit, the pancake theory, and one layer fell on, not in 8 seconds. Not in 8 seconds. Okay?
Both of them happened at the same time.
Right. And then buildings 7, which wasn't even hit, that collapsed. So.
The buildings imploded, they didn't explode.
Correct.
So that means that detonation devices were inside the buildings.
Correct.
Previous or prior to the actual hit. So the buildings imploded upon themselves, not exploded.
Exactly. So, but it allowed them immediately to blame this whole thing on Bin Laden, this mystery man, who's supposedly, running through the desert with and it's just absolutely outrageous. And it's an insult that they wouldn't even take, hook up with Hollywood and write a script.
It is an insult.
As you say that, I was watching a movie prior to 9/11. It was The Fugitive, one of those movies, and they showed America's Most Wanted flashing through with Wesley Snipes was in the movie, and they showed America's Most Wanted. They quickly flashed a Bin Laden years before 9/11. You get that subliminal that it's coming.
Right. But actually, April of 2001, the United States had already given him, I think, $26 billion to be the fall guy for 9/11. Right, and $70 billion to the Taliban in May. But also, it it allowed them to go immediately into a war. War stimulates the economy. Because remember, right, the day of 9/11, the national debt had went beyond the allowable limit according to the United States Code. So immediately they needed something to create a war so that they can, war in its morbid sense stimulates economy, it stimulates money, and so forth. And that's why, within that week, Bush was so interested in, like, let's go after them. And then they went after Hussein, and, it was just ridiculous. Ridiculous. Okay, now it's important after we went through the straw man that we deal with the contract, because all of us, our liberties are at stake, limited, compromised, because we're involved in contracts that we were never fully told that they were contracts, or don't really understand the nature of a contract. So here I'm just going to go over the nature of a contract. Using the eyesight of my old age.
An agreement between two or more persons which
She
creates...
needs the microphone. Thank you.
Contract. An agreement between two or more persons which creates an obligation to do or not to do a particular thing. Its essentials are competent parties, subject matter, a legal consideration, mutuality of agreement, and mutuality of obligation. Note, Black's edition.
Let me just stop you. So this is key. So they're saying that in order for a legal contract or a lawful contract to exist, it must have certain essential elements, competent parties. Okay, so if you were never told of the existence of your straw man certainly is not competent to enter into a contract. Subject matter. The straw man is not the flesh and blood, so there is no subject matter. Legal consideration. The state, when they, through the birth certificate, never gave your mother an opportunity to say, well, we're going to give you this birth certificate and we're going to create an artificial entity with the same name as your child, and we're going to put a bond behind it and sell it to the international creditors and use your child to make money to offset the United States debt. Because this is exactly what happened. So there was no legal consideration. Okay? Mutuality of agreement. Again, you weren't even told that your straw man existed. So it's impossible to have any mutual agreement. And mutuality of obligation. The straw man, is out there navigating in commerce, and you, the flesh and blood person, are working your ass off trying to pay the taxes and the debt incurred by the straw man. So note, all contracts, whether express or implied, are subject to the universal essentials of contract law, pertaining to the fundamentals of the interaction between parties. These fundamentals are well codified in many places. A contract is an agreement to do or not do a certain thing. So basically, at the Shrine, our position in severing these contracts is all of these contracts that we've entered into are based completely and solely on fraud. From the birth certificate to the driver's license, to the voter's registration card, to your credit card, which I'm going to get into the credit and show you that's a whole big lie.
Okay, so based on what I just heard, am I to interpret that the contract that you just mentioned is non-void?
Unless you make it that way. Everything it's presumed and assumed. We're operating under a colorable, I call them the Crayola class. Okay, it's a colorable jurisdiction. It has the appearance of law. But because we've never, questioned it or rebutted the presumption, it applies. You're under the jurisdiction. You're a straw man, you're a corporation until you deny it. So if you haven't denied it, yes, you are.
So it benefits the power that be, it don't benefit me.
It benefits the power that be to continue to be a straw man.
I see.
For someone who has a UCC1 financial statement, has their name copywritten, how can you deal with the color of law and go into these contracts, say for instance, to acquire property and things of that nature from the beginning, not from
You are at the end of my lecture.
Oh. Okay, continue,
that's
sister,
under
continue.
revenue. Number one, but we don't advocate copyright. I know a lot of sovereigns out there, they advocate copyrights. A lot of the European sovereigns do that. You can only, number one, copyright something you own. You don't own it because the state created it. Yes. Now, what we do in our paperwork is we have a security interest in the straw man. So that is to the extent, but we don't own it. Because when you copyright, okay, back to the national debt, out of the 9 trillion debt, each straw man or American person is responsible for at least, right, $40,000 to $50,000 of the national debt. And this is important because even if you don't have personal debt, when they begin to lock everybody up and put you in concentration camp, you still are responsible for a portion of that national debt. Unbeknownst to you, nobody told you agreed, but you haven't rebutted the presumption. So when you copyright the straw man's name, you even are more responsible and liable.
Really?
Because you're saying you own it. Yes. So if you have a dog and he bites the neighbor, you know, the neighbor could sue you because that's your dog. You own that dog. So we don't want to own the name of the straw man. We want to control it. Just like through trust, just like the creed of the rich. Own nothing, control everything.
Excuse me, say that again. Control nothing. No, own nothing, control everything. Gotcha. Thank you.
Other countries, no, the debtor prisons are right here, fully manned and operating. You know, they're just waiting for another chaotic episode, you know, which should be very soon when they collapse the dollar. You know, it's already difficult to survive. So if you devalue the dollar by 50%, you have people out there wilding out, stealing, robbing, and it's going to be the rationale and justification for martial law. You see, when the World Trade was bombed back in, I think it was 93, that was designed to do what it was doing now. But it couldn't be justified because not enough people were killed. You know, so with this one in 2001, they can justify, you know, the Homeland Security, the Patriot Act, because what, 3,000 people were killed. You know, so it's all about the Benjamins. You know, okay. It is essential to the existence of a contract that there should be parties capable of contracting. This is another way we can also get out of these contracts, because remember, the main contract was your birth certificate, and you didn't even do that. Your mother did it, your father did it. So, you know, these are just elements of how we dissolve or neutralize these contracts. There must be consent. Did you consent to a birth certificate? No. Lawful object and a sufficient cause and consideration. So, pool bank contract. All persons are capable of contracting except minors, persons of unsigned mind, and persons deprived of civil rights. So basically, a lot of these contracts were done without our consent or permission. You know, so when we study, I just want to make something clear because a lot of or some Moorish brothers and sisters are under the assumption that I'm saying by using commercial law and UCC that makes you sovereign. I want to say publicly on tape, I'm not saying no such thing. Your birthright makes you sovereign. Your genetic ancestry is what makes you sovereign. And unfortunately, being sovereign or not, we have entered into contracts which compromise our sovereignty. You know, Moors have traffic infraction issues than anybody I know. Why? You know, you're a sovereign Moor, but why are you having all of these problems with motor vehicles? Well, that's because you have contracts, you know, so that's separate and apart from your status that you're claiming and proclaiming. So it's about using both sides, standing on your square, reclaiming your nationality, and understanding commercial law and how to properly and effectively navigate in commerce. Because this is a whole body of knowledge that we've never been taught, and as a result of that, we are suffering greatly. This is why our businesses don't last. They, you know, we have problems even engaging in commerce with each other, because there's certain laws of commerce that we don't know and we were never taught. And then combined with that, desperation, Freudian behavior, you know, you have to...
Make a point.
Yeah. Yeah, that Freudian shit. And you know, you all know it when it's the nigga shit with business. And
No trust.
It's predicated on ignorance. I'm going to go on record and saying it. It's predicated on ignorance. Okay, the consent of parties to contract must be free, mutual, and communicated by each other. Again, none of these contracts, from motor vehicles to birth certificate, contain any of these elements. So this is how we're basically doing our paperwork differently. We're rejecting the liability that comes with these contracts because they were brought to us in a fraudulent manner from the door. Okay, and apparent consent is not real or free when obtained through duress, menace, fraud, undue influence, or mistake. You know, if you want to register your child in school, you know, they will harass the hell out of you if you don't bring a birth certificate, this, or your matrix instruments. You know, and, okay, when a contract wholly void, okay, where a contract has but a single object, and such object is unlawful, whether in whole or in part, or wholly impossible of performance, or so vaguely expressed as to be wholly unascertainable, the entire contract is void. So this is where we're coming from again. We are saying we're rebuking. You know how your grandmother, I rebuke you. We're rebuking these fraudulent contracts. Effective its legality. If any part of a single consideration for one or more object of several considerations for a single object is unlawful, the entire contract is void. Okay. I know Dot, it's 9:20, right? We got to be out of here by a few minutes. And there's so much stuff that I want to cover.
It's 9 o'clock, so...
9 o'clock?
Yeah.
I had 9:20.
No, it's 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
That's your work now.
About a half. About a half. You can go. About a half.
We need a part two.
How many more, because I want to get into the whole criminal injustice.
Yeah.
So you, okay. Well, okay. This is basically, even the Bible deals with the aspects of a contract. Offer, acceptance, consideration, and mutual assent, which is mutual agreement. And so none of the contracts that we're involved in has any of this stuff.
Sister Myra, can I just ask you, can you say something about now they want to put those chips in your license?
Right,
And
the
they're going to
RFID
make
chips.
you, if you don't get this chip, you can't get a license without.
Right, this is why I'm coming to the community with remedies, because this is part of the national ID, which will be in effect in May 2007. And on those on my email list, I think I sent out an email showing you and different things you can do to test to see which of your credit cards already have this. And there's also a picture of how it'll be placed and where it'll be placed in your hand. You know, so it's, you know, it's about rebutting the presumptions. You are a straw man until you deny it.
The microchip that the sister mentioned, does that represent the what's been saying in the Bible about the mark of the beast or 666? Okay.
All right, whole question so we can move forward.
Yeah, okay, yes, yes. Okay, criminal justice. So let me just get to the credit cards, because I'm sure many of us got debt issues. Okay, we are under a bankruptcy. The bankruptcy is tightened up even much more as of last October, October 17th. The United States went from a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is reorganization, to a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is liquidation. Now, as I said, I pointed out the straw man, the Roosevelt took the birth certificate. There's a bond against everybody's birth certificate valued at $1 million. They borrowed this money from foreign creditors, and then they passed that debt back to the people. In this, what did you say? I must write, no, I
Credit
what?
Credit and debit.
Right, credit cards. Right, now, under this bankrupt system, we're using fiat money. And as you remember, before the symbol for a dollar meant this. Now, basically, this is the symbol for a dollar. No smoking, no cigarettes. You see the line going through it? No money. Okay? So everything we're using is artificial form of currency inside of a bankruptcy already. Okay? And so what happens is, now that we are in a Chapter 7, which is liquidation, the foreign creditors that own the birth certificate of the American people can now go into liquidation. And basically, you know, this is how it relates to the work camp. Somebody talked about the work camp. In a liquidation, basically, all your assets are assessed and taken to pay off the bankruptcy. In this point, the American people, their assets represent their energy. Okay, and in the energy, the concentration camps basically are set up. There's several in every state. They're all manned and fully operational. They even have, you know, you'll see a lot of the storage facilities. They're all near railroads and train stations, if you think back on Fulton, downtown Brooklyn, Long Island City, you know, the big storage facility, and all of these trains. And they're basically designed to start to begin to transport people into these concentration camps. Basically, I sent out an email showing you one operation on there. You go through a turnstile. You know, it's like Roach Motel. You go in, but you don't come out. All the barriers are pointing inward, so whoever is inside, you can't get out. And basically, the American people are being set up to work off the national debt in these concentration camps. we can keep the questions to a minimum.
What about Georgia stones and how many people they want dead by? Now, obviously, that's
well, you know, it's again all about the Benjamin. Even with the whole war from what developed with 9/11, all of these people in the military, they understand that they have to disarm a certain amount of the military, because when martial law and all of this is publicly declared, they know the military is not going to be coming to grab their uncle to and put him in a concentration camp. So this is why you see so much foreign military here in the United States now. You know, because and they had to also eliminate a certain amount of the military before this went into place through, you know, the vaccines, the Iraq, all of that. Not to mention that they got $10 million on their straw man. So all these soldiers that are dying, you know, again, it's stimulating the economy. So, with liquidations, right, and the credit card. So because we are using no money, we're using fiat money, this is also one of the reasons why there's so much hatred with Iran and Iraq, because based on their religious beliefs, they don't believe in using fiat money. They're discharging their debt with gold and silver. So the powers that be, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, they can't afford to have a sovereign power or country using real money when so much everybody is using fiat.
Yes.
So this is one of the main reasons that they're coming under attack so much. You know, and also it would point out and show up the bankruptcy, you know, and people would begin to ask questions. So with this whole controlled system of fiat money, it affects everything in everyday commerce, because there's no money, everything is contract. So when you go and you get a credit card or you get a mortgage, everyone in this room, I'm sure, thinks that when you apply for your little credit card or your little mortgage, that the bank is lending you their personal assets, and that because they're lending you their assets, they are now allowed to charge you interest or finance charges. You know, based on all banks' charters, they cannot lend their own assets. What's creating the money, and this is why you have to understand who you are in commerce. Your signature is creating the money. When you sign a promissory note, you're signing a promise to pay. And really, that's all Federal Reserve notes is. There's a promise to pay because it has no value. So you're signing this promissory note. Now, you're giving it to the banker. They are now depositing it in what's known as a demand deposit account, which is really a fancy word for a checking account. You know, and when they take your signature on the promissory note, they deposit it in a demand deposit account. It comes out on the books on the other side as credit. So that's what they're lending you, the money that your signature created, not their asset. Okay, I know that's a kind of a difficult concept to get. It took me a while. I was like, so you're saying. But this is basically what's going on. And they're charging you interest over 10, 20, 30 years to get rid of it. And you are really, you create the money, your signature. In a bankruptcy, the greatest thing is your signature. That's why it's important that you modify your signature in this New World Order climate. There's several remedies that we use. You decided without recourse, UCC 1207, UCC
103.
103 and 308. What's the one we was talking about outside, brother? 308, right. And so that, you know, you are reserving all your rights. So that whenever you do wake up and figure all this stuff out, you can come out of these contracts and literally revoke your signature. Because there is no money. The people are the money. The people's labor, their energy, and their ignorance. That's what represents the money. And I know that's, again, that was a concept that I had to go through that to fully understand what it means. And you know, I had my oh shit moment. But, because it's so diabolical. Right. You know, we can't even really phantom, you know, you're charging a 30-year interest, you know, for money that I created, that wasn't even the assets from your bank, you know.
I think it was Brother Clay that said, if you think about it, everything in this room was created by man, woman, right? Yes. So we are really the money itself. You know, the chair didn't create us, we created the chair. So it goes back to us.
The Truman Show. You know the Truman Show?
Exactly. You know, so we have been so used to being in an artificial jurisdiction that, you know, it's the natural order of the day. Because, you know, some people are like, well, why do I need to know all this? And, you know, it's your personal choice, you know. You know, it's a lot of stuff to learn, it's a lot of stuff to absorb, but you need to understand what's happening so when things start cracking, when the martial law is publicly, because we've been under martial law for a while, it just isn't publicly declared. Now, when it's publicly declared, trust me, shit's going to hit the fan. Okay, so we have to understand when the real creditors stand up, and that's us. So that means that you stand up and you protect yourself in commerce and you understand who you are, where you are. You know, the whole nature of a loan. This is how I was able to win 2 civil cases in court without an attorney. Because what we need to understand with the credit card cases, this whole dynamic I just told you about, that your signature created the money, not that the credit card bank lent you their assets. Say you default on a credit card, the credit card company, they have an insurance policy, they do what's called a charge-off, then they sell it to a debt collector for 10 cents on the dollar, and these are the people that are calling you and say, you know, okay, you owe $15,000, if you work with me, you know, I'll accept 10. Now, they just brought this so-called $15,000 debt for maybe $1,000, and they're going to get you to pay them 10. You know, and this is where standing comes into place. You had a contract with the credit card company, not with this third person. So the person who bought the debt, when they're coming after you, they have no legal standing. They have no jurisdiction because you don't have a contract. You have to understand that every single thing you do is contract. Everything, whether they tell you or not, everything is contract. And if you're not skillful enough in signing these contracts, then you become liable for it. So now you have this third-party debt collector hounding you, stalking you, calling your job, calling you at home. You turn over, try to get some sleep, they're harassing the hell out of you over a debt that they don't even have a right to collect in the first place. So basically, when I took, you know, they took me to court. I basically asked them to verify and validate the debt. And this is a copy of the certificate of disposition showing that I got everything dismissed. And so now you can even clean up your credit with this because you send this to the credit reporting agency to get both negative statements off your credit card. And there's a series of letters that we send the credit card collectors to validate, you know, prove how you have any legal standing in this case. Prove how you lent me any money. Prove how the original credit credit and let me money for that sake. So once we understand that this whole thing is a scam and a fraud, and we begin to learn the language to protect ourselves in commerce, and to, not go under assumption and presumption, we can change the whole game. Okay.
Can we get a copy of that?
A copy?
Is it on the disc that the lady has?
No, that's basically my personal, it's called a certificate of disposition. And it has the court seal on it. Yeah, the court seal on it, and it just shows that I won that case. And that they basically can't come back and try to collect that.
Do you have to send that in before you go to court, or you take it with you?
No, you get this from the court after you win your case. It's proof that I won my case. So I'm sitting up here, I try to show proof, because a lot of this stuff just sounds so psychotic, no, she may be going to this court. Yeah, I did. And here's the evidence.
How long a process was it? How long did it take?
Months and sleepless night and anxiety. My good buddy Don and a couple of my friends were there with me. They gave me a private courtroom. They didn't want anybody. So that's why people have a hard time believing this, because you don't know anybody who's done this. Because people who are operating as sovereigns and winning these cases, they're in private courtrooms and it's sealed. So, when I come, that's why I'm bringing the evidence. So, it's like, yeah, right, But, so they don't want this publicized. No, we were the only ones in the courtroom. And basically went in there as a sovereign more, standing on my square, to the point where the judge walked in the room, I had my back turned, much less stand up. I'm the sovereign. Okay? And so the law clerk was trying to get me to stand up. He's like, you got to stand up, you got to stand up. And I just completely ignored them, and the judge was like, no, let it go, let it go. But then also, I'm not going to make it seem that easy. The level of paperwork that I came in there with, there's something known as apostilles, authentications, letters, documents that you get from the Secretary of State, which makes your document a completely legal, lawful document that they can't ignore. We put this on all of our status documents. We file them in the public record. This is the United States of America seal. This one's from Colin Powell. I wear these people out, make them do their job. As you can see, the seal. And when I wanted to talk briefly about the situation with my son. March 24th of this year, he was standing at a bus stop, minding his own business. Apparently there was a robbery going on across the street. The lazy cops just found the first 4 melanated people that they could find, arrested them, went through this whole long process. He was in lockup for like 15 hours. Basically, it was just hell. And so the attorney that they assigned to him, I explained to him, under no circumstances do we want a plea bargain. You just get him out on his own recognizance, and I'll take it from there. Anyhow, you do anything less than that, I guarantee you by Monday morning you'll be in a soup kitchen. And I proceeded to read him his bar number. Most lawyers don't even know their bar number. So once I read that to him, he's like, okay. So you have to basically speak, if you cannot, it's about, in this commerce game, it's about knowing how to harm people commercially if they trespass on your rights. If you can't do that, this is why there's a lot of different groups out there doing paperwork, and people are getting into trouble, people are not benefiting from it, because if it's not done properly, yes, you could get in serious trouble and go to jail behind trying to be sovereign, being a fictitious sovereign, okay? So you really have to know how to submit your paperwork properly. You know how to have to use certain seals on them. It has to contain certain language. Otherwise, you know, it just doesn't work. You know, you have to do it correct. There's no room for error, and there's no room for doing it incorrect. And there's a lot of people out there selling paperwork that's just like our money, useless security. You know, and so you need to be able to study. This is why the 13-week class, you know, a lot of people's like, oh, $3,500, that's so much, this and that. What you get from that $3,500 is beyond. You know, it's when we went to the city that day and we met with these investment bankers, talking to them about negotiable instruments and things, and we showed him our paperwork. And he kept saying over and over, what law firm did your paperwork? What law firm did your paperwork? I'm like, you know, we did our paperwork. I did my paperwork. He's like, yes, but what law firm did, you know? And so he said the only paperwork that he's seen this type was by someone who did obtain a lawyer to try to access their exemption, and he paid $25 million for the paperwork. So there's a lot of bullshit paperwork going out there. And if you want cheap, there's a list of people out there that I could give you who can do your paperwork. But don't come back to me after I give you the number. You know, so you have to be precise. There's no room for error, and once you put certain seals on it, you know, it puts your documents at an international status. You know, this again with my son, it was a complete nightmare. Even though the victim said that my son and the other boys had absolutely nothing to do with his robbery, the district attorney, the Queens District Attorney's Office, still had all intentions of moving forward. So at that point, that completely pissed me off. I'm like, you don't even have a victim, and you're going to still railroad these 4 boys. But the most important thing you got to understand is this whole prison system is about commerce. When you first get arrested and they take your fingerprints and your picture, that is the beginning of the commercial game. That is the beginning of the bond. If you notice, all these police officers now, they're not using badge numbers. They have the 5-digit badge numbers. If you look on the ticket, you put up the ticket with the tax ID number on the bottom. I scanned it. It should be. You know, so police officers are nothing more than revenue agents. This is why they're doing everything to arrest you, from jaywalking to this to that. Because you have to understand, every time, so when you're in prison, they're tapping into your exemption, which I didn't go into today, but basically we all have that as a result of HJR 192 when they took the lawful form of money out. But it's very difficult to get to. But certain corporations are using our exemption every single day. And you have to understand, for every person that's in lockup, they're getting $350 a day from their Social Security. You know, and if you're on probation, well, minus $40 for other people. But if you're on probation or parole, they're getting the whole $350 because they don't have to pay for the update. So this is why, you know, the cops are out there just trying to arrest everybody. You know, even the cops themselves are protesting that they shouldn't have a quota on the amount of arrests, but it makes money. You know, all of this stuff ends up being traded on Wall Street, these mutual fund, stock market, everything. I had a whole thing I wanted to go in. I'm just trying to go through everything. But there's an entire industry that is being created off of our back. You want to say something?
Well, just basically, when you have a criminal situation, and one of the first things that they tell you is that you have charges against you. But what are really charges?
And we go along with the program, we acquiesce. But in this case that went all the way to New York State Supreme Court, it states that the police department does not have the right to take your prints or take your picture under any circumstances until there's been charges have been proved and substantiated against you. Huh?
Can you say that case again, please?
Gow versus Bingham. Now, what happens when you're arrested? G-O-W-B-I-N-G-H-A-M. As I would recommend, that you wouldn't sit there and get belligerent, you know, I'm a sovereign, this, that, because we've seen from experience that doesn't work. You know, you have to really be extra humble and clear and stand on your split. He said, you know, excuse me, officers, no disrespect. You know, I understand my rights, and unless you can show me proof that this case, because I suggest you keep it in your wallet, has been overturned, I refuse to give my fingerprints or my taking any pictures. Now, when they don't have that, they can only legally hold you for 3 days, and then that's the end of the case. You know, otherwise, you know, with my son's situation, we went to a whole series of 3 months with just going back and forth, putting, submitting our sovereign paperwork, documenting our status, threatening to lien everybody in the room and take their bond, you know, because I'm telling you, this is the only thing that they understand. So one of the tools that we use as free entities, it's known as the administrative procedure. And this is covered under Title 5 in the U.S. Code. And basically, we need to understand that the 3 highest powers in the state is the Secretary of State, which is where we're getting our seals from, the sheriff, you know, except in New York City, and the notary. The notary is a sovereign person's judge. A notary is capable of doing an administrative procedure, which in essence is a legal, lawful, judicial proceeding without the courtroom. You know, and it's just basically, they have like short 3-step processes. The one we use is 9 steps, and it's completely thorough. So like these credit card agencies, we're writing them, we're asking them to verify the debt. They don't answer, we go through the 9-step administrative procedure. We send them a true bill for basically engaging in fraud, trying to extort money out of us when they don't have legal standing, and we're sending them a $3 million bill. Then we go through the administrative procedure, we file it in district court, and then we now have we put a UCC-1 lien on the judgment, because a notary can issue a judgment once you've gone through all the steps. Now, most notaries, unfortunately, they don't understand that they have this power. The only notaries that are still doing this commonly is in the back. When they take your foreclosure on your property, they're using an administrative procedure and using a notary. You can look in the notary handbook, and it'll also give you more information. We need as many notaries in the community as possible, because as this reign on terror emerges against us, we need to use a notary to document and create a paper trail, and to also even be compensated. Because now this same lien, just as a debt collector, once you've perfected your lien, have it filed in the federal court, you now, and file it with the UCC lien, you now have a perfected lien that you can sell on the open market for 10 cents on the dollar, just like the regular debt collectors are doing. But in this case, yours is more lawful because you have standing, because you've tried to communicate with them through this administrative procedure, validate the debt, prove you lent me money, this and that, and it's a whole process. I'm making it seem simple, but you're using registered mail, sending out letters. It's a whole process.
I got it. I was reading where the sovereign people were the bankers, the postmaster, and they own notes. All they did was their thumbprint to do the note.
Exactly. And that was then before all of these fictitious corporations, came into
So it no longer applies?
Well, we use our thumbprint on certain documents, yes. But we also have a seal, a sovereign seal saying sui juris mor, and then we seal all our documents. Because a person who signs last on your document, they own the paper, and this is why they make the notary sign last. So if this is our document on the back-end corner, we'll put our signature, so it is the last signature on the page, and so we have complete jurisdiction of that. Okay? Well, in closing, I just want to say thank you to everybody in my crew that put up with my craziness, helped me. Marlon did the PowerPoint, Camille, Rendell, Shawnee, my children, my buddy John, everybody who made this possible, thank you. The actual 13-week class will be available at the end of the month. We have found new information. We're constantly updating. There's so much information that we have. Maybe we'll do a part 2 because they're absolute. You got to come on time. Crucial things, that's true, but, shit happens.
Give a back hand! We can all see how valuable the sister is. All right, so we want to appreciate, give our special thanks. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. So I'm pushing for the sister to come back. Hey, listen, get on that email list and make sure you sign the email list on the way out if you didn't, because your participation will determine when we bring the sister back. Everybody got an email her every day and tell her to come back. That's what I'm doing. Hey, come back.
My email address is on all the cards. If you want to be on my free email list, I send out a lot of information. Also on the frame, and I will add you.
All right, so that's what's popping. We got to be out of here by 10. So you don't have to go home when you leave here. But you got to get the hell up out of here by 10 o'clock.